And who else?
It's supposed to smoke.
Just got an email.
Go on now.
this afternoon.
Oh, Nancy.
Oh, Nancy, that's right. That's really unlikely that you
Yeah.
can make it. Anybody else?
Wouldn't be the first time I walked in the wrong meeting.
Nancy's kiddo is sick.
Nancy kiddo sick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Saw that email. Let me see.
Here we go.
One more, maybe.
Read it here.
Bill, is that here?
There's Meg. Hi, Meg. Welcome.
We got quorum, not bad. Are you making use of the office?
Yes.
Name
I figured.
I never heard from Jesse, so I'm not sure.
Well,
Cynthia's the planning board meeting, sorry. Cynthia's-
Well, we're-
not- yeah,
Okay.
that- yeah, there's-
I was curious.
Choose the same.
Oh, right.
And
And then
Yeah.
Josh. I don't see
Did you-
Yeah,
Josh.
Josh, no, Josh.
No,
No Josh.
didn't hear from
Yeah,
him.
could have
Is
said
the school board the fourth, the second and the fourth
We
too?
got two copies.
We were doing it on off.
We're trying to do it on off, okay.
Trying to do it on off.
I thought they were doing Mondays, opposite the council. Oh,
No, they're Thursdays now. School board, yeah.
okay.
Yep, Harold, look it up on the internet.
Okay, so at this point, Josh is, the only one.
Okay.
All right.
All set? Okay, first up on the agenda is consideration and approval of the minutes of May 8th. Any discussion on those minutes? And if not, is there a motion?
Make a motion to accept as written.
Seven?
Second.
Okay, Katie gets the second. Discussion, those in favor? And that appears to be unanimous. All right, thanks very much. So, we move on to the big item on tonight's agenda, which is an update from the outreach committee. And we had our sixth meeting on Tuesday this week. In recent past, we were meeting once per week at least, sometimes packing a couple in to get this survey done and out first to you. And then, once we agree on the survey, out to the members of the public. So,
It's mine, not part of versus being good.
you probably noticed that last week in the town crier, there was not a notice to the public about the upcoming survey. That was, I guess, an oversight on the part of staff, but we're quite confident that Whitney's going to have one in this time.
Yeah, there was one on Instagram, right?
Yeah, there was a social media one too.
Oh, okay,
Yep.
okay, yep. And, the postcard is going out soon.
Once we have all the links, it'll go out.
Okay, right, okay. So word should be spreading around to members of the public. So tonight, you should have received in one format or another, a copy of the updated version of the outreach committee survey, which was put together after our Tuesday night meeting. So it is fresh off the press, so to speak. And Richard is here.
I'll take a paper
Oh,
copy.
okay, yeah. Copies available if you like.
I'll take one too. Kill them trees.
Hey, they're already shells. So they're gonna go. Evan, you want?
Yeah.
I'll take one. Thank you so much. You got.
I got one,
yeah.
On it.
You guys.
Right. I think I saw them. This is the news one.
Hey, yeah. Guys, see you next week.
Exactly. So we can thank Meg for the first page, which is a brief summary from the subcommittee to this full committee. And Meg, thanks again for having done that. And the rest of the bulk of the survey follows on the page marked one. So any questions on the summary? Well, I guess the plan basically is to go through this from start to finish. What we'd like to do is take any sort of minor question in terms of terminology, stylus, style matters and anything that's just inherently unclear or whatever as we go. And there may be some major questions, which, for the sake of getting through it once, I'd like to hold to the end of that portion of the meeting and then go back and deal with any major issues or major topics or matters of that nature. So we have,
Steve,
yes.
can I kick off by saying job well done on this committee?
Excellent.
It was really a good read.
Oh,
Yeah,
thanks
we're
very
trying to
much.
start off on a positive note. It was.
Thank you.
I wasn't gonna give it back, yeah.
You weren't? Okay,
It's like a
well,
little-
I mean, you know,
That works.
I might have comments, but I just wanted to say that I thought this was a great first product.
We all appreciate your comment. We did work those through.
Very welcome.
Can I add one thing, Steve?
Yes.
That this is not the final format because there will be a paper copy version and a online survey version, so don't get too hung up on the formatting, but if you have notes,
Good point.
take them.
Good point.
Most of my questions sort of were around formatting.
Okay.
Okay, yep, great. Thanks for pointing that out. We'll circle back to that toward the end. Well, we can move on then to first page of the survey itself. And as you can see in the second paragraph, we ask folks to complete and return the survey no later than a specified date yet to be determined. The reason why that's yet to be determined is due in part to the fact that the full committee has yet to adopt the survey. So until final adoption or agreement takes place, we can't really project out when the return date will be, but that will be filled in at that time. So this is divided into a number of different sections with their title. The first is demographics, kind of an easy one, I think, for the residents to complete and get into the rhythm of filling out the survey. And also gives those of us who will be reading the results a certain factual background in terms of those who has responded. What is the data concerning that respondent or that cluster of respondents? So it's basically ask them to describe their residency, full-time or part-time, or if they simply don't live here but yet own property and pay taxes here.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi. Sorry to be late.
Oh, you are here.
I had a copy of the survey. Yeah, I got one in time.
Oh, good. Okay.
Thank you.
We're just getting started, Nancy, actually. The very first page of the survey. And then we get into the person's, we specify that one per resident. So for example, if you are from a adult household, we would hope that two come back. If you have an adult living with you or adults, we would expect and hope to get one from every adult residing with you. But this is not a one per household, but one per adult resident. And we ask for the appropriate or applicable age bracket, duration of residency. We ask the people the respondents to designate which portion of town they live in. And as you can see from you're using the paper copy or looking at the screen, the three areas of town have been color coded for easy reference. And these, in fact, are the three areas as defined by the town charter. We didn't make them up. These areas have basically been as they are shown since the charter took effect in 1973. We don't ask where in the center or the Forsyth people live. That's beside the point. We're just asking for the area. We then ask for the number of children and the age bracket of children, if there are any. And then we get into employment status of the respondent. How often they commute, if in fact they are employed. Zip code of the place which they commute to, if they're working outside the home. Number of brackets regarding annual household income. gender, and then finally, whether looking ahead to the 10-year period for which this survey is designed to address, you expect to be here as a resident at that, at the end of that time. Any questions on the demographic chapter? Okay, yes, so you.
Well, I was just, to most of us, I'm sure that it's obvious when we say one per Cumberland resident, like that we're talking about adults. I don't know if we want to specify.
Well, this actually says less than 18 years. So we talked about that,
We did talk about that. Yes.
that it's okay for minors
Oh, yes,
to
that's right.
complete. Is that what we've?
I lost track of that.
Yeah.
Did we have a lowest age?
I don't
No.
think we need to.
No, okay,
I don't think so either.
all right, okay. Yep.
And basically, the point of the demographic questions is that we can splice the data on the back end, right? So these are all identifying factors that we'll be able to pull out. So we would be able, if we ask that question, then we'll be able to pull out those responses from people younger than 18 and see their kind of aggregated data, right?
Yeah.
Any concerns about?
Well,
minors?
I was just thinking that I could see people wondering, does that mean, my high school kid should fill it out or, just, I'm sure most people are going to say it's going to be an adult type scenario, but I just think that there, some people with it open, it's going to be open to interpretation, which is fine, but I didn't catch the, the less than 18 or something.
Yeah.
Okay.
What's your age? So.
By the way, each respondent is not required to answer each and every question. So some may choose to not respond to some and respond to others. And, so let's see. Does that take care of your?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Evan, you're up.
I'll direct us at the GP cog folk. Is it worth having a question on own versus rent? And or is that something you can pull in the data that you guys are going to pull from other sources like census?
So there will be like ACS census data,
Mhm.
With I think if you expect a very, very strong showing from your survey response rate, which I think you do, and we're trying to keep all of these things comparatively, like I think it would be probably beneficial to have that included. Because from the other sources, it'll be a different frame, it'll be a different, sort of like time frame, it'll be a different margin of error, all of these things. And so if we are planning to pull things out by subgroup,
Right.
I think that would be probably actually pretty wise. That being said, I don't think there's a huge rental population in Cumberland, but it would be nice to know that we at least were acknowledging that. So I think that's a very fair point.
Certainly a lot more than there was at the last.
So can I just propose adding rent or own question?
Yeah, I think maybe in
Chapter
section 5, which immediately follows the area of town. Do you own or rent? Yes or no?
Do we need to make a motion for that or can we just mark it up?
Can we do what now?
Do we need to make a motion to add that or just mark it
I
up?
think for purposes of the meeting, we could just.
Great. I'm happy with that.
Anybody else have any thoughts on Evan's suggestion?
No, I think that's a good one.
I think that could be helpful.
Your demographics that we're missing.
The post-college kid that lives with me. That doesn't own or rent.
Yeah, I think if you're gonna, it would be nice to do another in the same or
Other.
yeah, or it's like to not have a whole separate question for that category, but I think, yeah, 100%, that's a really still live with family, other or something,
Yeah,
like we
there
can
you go.
massage that a little bit.
Okay. Does other cover it for you, Bill?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. I just figured
And
There's not, there's a lot of kids that age that are living in town.
Yeah. Throw it out.
And I guess while we're at it, it might be worth saying, I don't live in Cumberland, I'm another there is another class of folks that were business owners, I think that we're talking about, so.
Non-resident property
Or
owners,
Exactly.
One.
so other or NA.
Oh, yeah, this one.
Yep.
So property owners may not necessarily be businesses. They may simply own raw land,
Yeah,
undeveloped land.
Yeah.
The other get to it though.
yeah.
Yeah.
There's not gonna be that many people. That's not gonna be that many in the
No,
category.
no, I think so, but there are some. All set with that, and anybody else on the demographics? Lorraine?
Question 11 about income, so jumping down to question 12, where we're, asking about gender, and we do offer the prefer not to say. Under income, I've typically seen that as an option, when you're asking people how much money they make to say, to allow them to say prefer not to say.
Thought.
Anybody have any concerns about that?
And just a point question for GPCOG team, when we're making an online survey, these are not going to be required.
Correct.
Okay, so
You can still skip them, but I prefer not to say,
It's
it's one
okay.
half dozen the other, but I'd say we default, if somebody skips it, we'll count it as prefer not to say. But also give them the option not to say.
Okay. All right, and Bridget, you have that? Okay. Oh,
Quick.
she's quick. She's had 6 meetings to practice. how to-
okay. Still open for questions and comments on demographics. Okay, if there aren't any, don't think you've missed the boat. We can come back to it later on. Next section is recreation and open space. And this begins with a list of the town-owned recreational and open space properties, and asks the respondent to classify the degree to which they use the property, they take advantage of it. And we did have a discussion the other night about the ambiguity in using the term like frequently or occasionally or whatever. To define them, each of them would take a lot of paper, and it would be very boring, I think, for the recipient. So we do recognize there's a high degree of subjectivity here. But I think we can live with that. And let people judge for themselves if they go to a certain place frequently or only occasionally. And then, you know, that doesn't really, I think it communicates the idea without, I guess, the specifics of an actual series of definitions. The next question deals not with existing town properties, but potential future investments in properties and or facilities here in town. Some of these questions come from the earlier survey or plans, actually, more than just the immediate, the current plan. And they've been in circulation for some period of time. I think particularly the outdoor swimming pool, which kind of rears its head every now and then, and it's always up for discussion. We speak about future land acquisition for sports and recreation, and for school construction. So
Why would school be included? It's a joint district, so it's the district that would buy the land, not the town.
it would be,
Wondered that too.
it would be, and
So that shouldn't be included.
well, that's a good point, Janet. I think we're going to have some questions at the end of our quick go through about the school system, that is, and whether other questions should be included. So I think what we'll do is just perhaps leave it there for the time being, but you do raise a good point. It would not,
It's
it would be acquired by the district and not by the town.
Right.
Not to get too far into it, we should come back to it, but I think it's there because it was on the last survey as well, I believe.
I think it was.
Well, and I think it was also put in there too, that whether I agree it would be acquired by the district, but if the town had the opportunity and had the forethought to see that coming and knowing that schools were going to expand, it might.
I'm guessing it came out of Kyle's Way and that they were going to sell the property at a lovely price to the, but that's not acquiring land. That's selling the land for the school, which is a totally different thing. Although we still pay 2/3, so I guess technically we are buying it ourselves.
Yeah, it was really more of if there's an opportunity to acquire a piece of land that could be used for something like that in the future. Because we know it's coming in the future, or likely coming in the future. See if people would be willing to do that for some other purpose. Was the thought process.
Beat the horse a little bit more. Historically, the council and members of the town have always been proactive in identifying pieces of land before the school ever got a committee together and so it's.
But you didn't buy it. Like this is saying we would buy it. Not we would help them find one, which is a totally different, we should do that.
The legwork was done by the town. On these 3 occasions.
They didn't like any of it. It's very expensive.
And I had one other point of information, because this just got me thinking about it. When we went through, we took the old survey and we split it up and we all took questions. And then we went through and we tried to eliminate, well, make stuff concise, but also eliminate stuff that had already been completed. Like, do you want a beach on the ocean? So like we took that one out. We also tried to add some new ones. One that we added that I don't think anyone felt extremely for or against, but we were just trying to think of other things that might be of interest, was the acquisition of historically significant buildings. Again, not endorsing it or anything, but that's how we ended up with this list of questions. So I was struggling a little bit in this, when we were meeting about, think about like, what are we not asking? So I'm hoping that in this meeting too, that all of you, as you're reading it, might spark some thought of maybe things that would be to ask. Yeah.
Note that we do have the and other options, so if people want to write in their thoughts. There's a space to do so. And we have talked about capping responses at about 100 words, just because of the difficulty in reading lengthy essays and making sense of them when we report out the results of the survey to the council. But anyway, that's an option. So that covers it for the questions. Okay. Next topic is town services. And we basically ask people to indicate whether or not a particular town department or service meets their needs or doesn't. It also allows them to indicate they don't have enough contact with the department or service to express an opinion. That's pretty close to not applicable. But it perhaps is it's more accurate to say that, well, let's just say if you're in your 30s and 40s, you're clearly not involved in active living 55 plus. Therefore, you have don't have enough experience. Not to say it's not applicable to you, because you may have friends or relatives who are taking part in that program and appreciate it. So anyway, that was how we came out.
I had a question about Public Works, and whether that would also, I know that, I believe, trash is contracted out.
It is.
Would that still be included as a service? Because I know that I heard chatter in my neighborhood after the bulky waste went away, which I understand was very expensive.
Sure.
But that just might be something we want to get people's feedback on.
That's a good thought.
Yeah.
I think we should add it.
Yeah.
Remember one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
'Cause it's year's contracted out. Yeah.
Well, because we have potentially a big change coming in
Yeah.
July, right?
Right.
Big trash counts.
Yeah, we might want to
Trash
be
cans are
careful
common.
with, or we might want to be intentional with the way that we word it, because we're moving to like the robo,
Yeah.
there's no longer going to be, a person there, so that is going to dramatically change the way that trash is collected. So we may want to account for that, because everyone is going to get, everyone's gonna get their own 2 trash bins, right? And that might not be enough for some families, or it might be too much for other families. And so, I'm not sure about how it works with the timing.
Is it a comprehensive plan question, though?
That's,
That's kind of my take on it.
Yeah.
I mean, some of these things is like, that doesn't
Yeah.
affect our 10-year plan, right? So,
no, except for when it comes to the TNS work, or the folks that are doing the, looking at composting, kind of, farming, like kind of, that's something, where that might be able to tie in, because there is a lot of effort from the Land and Conservation Commission looking at food waste, creating a town-wide composting program and ways to kind of, offset the environmental impact. So because of that here, we could get creative with.
We do have it further down.
I guess I would just, if people want an outlet. And I mean, I don't think that survey is a terrible idea. I think the only problem would be if this survey is open during that transition, then you get screwy data. But
We're
other,
hoping this is in June and then that happens in July.
Well, it's supposed to happen. They're waiting for trucks, which are not
Oh, wow.
forthcoming. That's
that's gonna get pushed back even more of that. So we don't have to
So we
worry
should
about
be
that.
okay. Or not.
So if we said solid waste collection and recycling, is that covered for everybody?
Yeah. I think that's good.
Yeah, because when you look at your 4 choices, if you don't say it needs, you still have a place to write a comment at the bottom.
Yeah.
Sure.
About it,
And in the town budget, there's a line item for solid waste. Am I wrong on that? So I'm using the right term from from the council's budget.
There is a section in the budget that's, it's not a public works, it's way something.
We just call it trash talk.
Sorry.
It's
Trash and recycling, because that's what it is. It's trash day.
well, and we also, it's a vendor. So it's a line item, this is a contract.
Right.
So it becomes.
But for the residents, they receive it as it's trash day.
Yeah.
There's the trash truck.
I got the trash.
All right. And I have trash.
Right.
Also the trash. The other house.
I would like to add something after the Act of 55, but that's the not so active older people.
Services.
Because I think I'd like to hear people's thinking process of what, end of life means for them and whether the community provides any services. Hopefully we'll see some comments. We would like to see the town provide assisted living. I would like to see the town provide, congregate care. We'd like to see the town provide end of life options, something more than just Act of 50.
So would you have a new?
I would have a description.
We have to have a new question because this asks about the current
Existing.
department services and needs, not future. We currently don't have those services.
So how would you do that without asking a question like, what services would you like to see? Which doesn't fit with the rest of the framework of the questionnaire.
We would have to just add that
Add another question.
I think that's a good idea.
But can we add a question like that? Or it's like, we should.
Could it be like
replace
a
these
general?
services check as many or?
Yeah.
Or
Well, I like to tie in with the Act of 55, and if it came after that, it triggers the thinking.
Or if there's a question directly beneath that,
Right, that's what I
in
mean.
front of them. Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
so an insert above 17, which I think would make sense.
Sure.
Are there any town
Services you'd like to see.
that you'd like to see
Yeah.
that don't currently exist or some?
Okay, other than the word.
But I am trying to draw the attention to that, and not just services, because people won't necessarily, I don't know how to wordsmith that, but.
Leading the witness.
Do you want to come back to it?
Sure.
If you had time to think about it.
Other services for seniors, please specify.
Yeah, but what about other services for non-seniors?
Well, if
We're doing
you're-
like a catch-all.
Yeah.
Well, daycare, we certainly have a need for daycare. Okay. You know, maybe that should be,
I don't know, yeah. Think about it.
I think the thinking is that as minimum as it can be while being maximally comprehensive, which is a tough needle to thread. And I think the survey committee has done an admirable job of trying to flesh that out. Anytime you introduce a specific item, there will always be other specific items that we can ask about as well. And so if we can keep it general, the hope is if there are folks who these services are top of mind, this is something that I would like the town to be offering, then that's going to leap to front of their mind when they have the opportunity to offer it. And similarly, if somebody says, golly, I cannot get my kid into daycare, that will be the top. But the moment we start segmenting it off into individual topics, then we have about 3 million individual topics that could reasonably be added in. So I would caution towards leaving it open-ended if possible.
So maybe you add in here, there, I mean, it's like, yeah, what the, is Bridgestone, are there other services that you would like to see that the town is not providing now?
Right.
Maybe it's a pretty open question.
I'm with you, but I'm not with you. If at the end of our discussion, we still only have 20 questions and we only add one more, then I'll value it on that one. But if we have a lot of, I mean,
I think, yes, 100%. 21 is not, I think the issue is that I imagine that everybody at this table has a question they'd like to add in and has a particular value that they'd be interested in. And so that's where it starts to get to the tough brass tacks, I think.
And I think the other thing that we need to think about is that there's some, we would like to probably target an active living population to do a deeper workshop, right? And that would be a really great target to ask, what services are we not providing you that you want the town to provide you? And so that gets your target with a group of individuals that we really want to answer that question.
maybe that falls under the, when we get into the housing piece, maybe that's an opportunity to expand that into that area.
And I think that's a really important point, is that this is like the tip of the spear for public engagement. And this is setting the table for you all in terms of, are there flashing lights in the community? Are there major themes that have changed? And we are going to be able to shape I want to say 6 public engagement events that we have that we're planning for. And so those can be fungible as well to account for these things in more specific detail and possibly to get more meaningful engagement from target groups of those things.
You can meet in the middle and maybe say something, are there population segments that you feel are underserved? That way, that's kind of super seniors, preschoolers, renters, and then it kind of limits people to like 7 different options in their head. And if they're thinking of end of life, that will come up. And then you frame it in parts of population segment and then take that and dive in deeper when it makes sense. So if I have my grandma's at home, I'd probably say the same thing you're thinking about. Like, hey, there's no, she doesn't play pickleball, right? So what can she do?
Yeah, I don't want to belabor the conversation,
Yeah.
but a lot of what we're doing with this comp plan is, and the potential is re-examination of lot size.
Yeah, sure.
And if I was asked the question, would I favor smaller lot sizes? As a general statement, I would say no.
Right.
But if you said, do you favor lot sizes for elder care or a specific, my answer is different. So
Maybe if we get through some of that other stuff will come out. I think we tried to get some of that to get at, like the lot size stuff and what changes we would make to zone, what changes do we think we would make to zoning, and what types of housing would you like to see? Maybe what you're getting at will come out as we get through this.
All right, should we continue on? And the next topic is, final question just deals with adequacy of public engagement or the opportunity to engage in public matters, if you choose to, how will we do it in terms of keeping you informed and giving you an opportunity to come to meetings, speak up, be aware that the meetings are being held. So I think this could be helpful if, to gauge where people are coming. The next,
I have one. Should we add comment box here? So as people are answering this question 19, they can think, well, I can never get to the subcommittee meeting because it's never on Zoom. Would you consider adding, like, is this a good time to add a comment box there for people to jot down their thoughts beyond just no? Because I'm not sure how, we're not going to dive into this in this question 19 in a standalone session, I wouldn't think. Just
Easy enough, right?
Like other,
No, just a comment in addition
As
to,
long as that's no, they have the opportunity to explain why.
like, some of them we have, you answer the question, but there's also add a comment.
We're all gonna say, what's the point? Why would I show up?
And that's
You never
okay,
did.
she's gonna have an intern, she can budget all those. But if someone has a really good point that they're never gonna make it to this meeting to bring up, or town council,
I tried to say something at planning board and Bob Dale yelled at me. Never happened, huh, Bob?
that's all. That would be fair. Because this was like 5 questions, we narrowed down to 1, so.
Well, I know that, I've heard from people that they would like to get involved in things, but, as parents with school age children, it's really difficult. Just like between work and kids' schedules and all of that kind of stuff, it's it's a lot. So I could see that coming up.
To that point, should we clarify that, opportunities to attend, participate, watch video? It's not laid out there that a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, I put and or stay informed to like cover that, but if that's not clear enough, I think watch is a good option too. But that's what I was thinking about, Katie, was like my sister-in-law has twins and she's like, they have big HOA where they live and the size of our whole town. And they're like, I can never get to the meetings because we're so busy. And they want to participate, but they can't.
Right.
anything else on that topic? All right, so we move on then to housing.
Oh, formatting. Yeah.
Yeah.
I see unsure over here, and I didn't catch that when I was scrolling. Where we have.
Which one are you looking at?
Sure, it's on the top of the next.
Oh, yeah. We make sure these things are tied together,
Yes.
because I didn't
so
even catch
so
that.
Evan said before that formatting will just be, it'll be done in like a hosted survey platform. So all of the questions will be connected.
And we were gonna make GPCog do all the copy editing. So on the print version, they'll make sure that doesn't jump pages.
Yeah, this is not the print version.
I caught that in a couple others, but I didn't catch it
Yep.
on this
Yeah.
one. Or the electronic, version. I jumped it again.
Okay, so under housing, we begin with some basic data, the most recent data available regarding median household income for the town, the county, and the state, and median home sales price information for the town, the county, and the state. Notice that it's not from the same year. The household income information comes from the state, and I guess we don't have it yet for 2020. So we're left with the data at the end of 2023. And in the paragraph below that short chart, discuss the difficulty of a family or even an existing resident in buying a home in town, moving up or whatever, and then offer a series of questions with a variety of responses to each one regarding the strength of someone's degree of support for the question or the proposition.
For the chart, would it be possible to include the median rental?
I can, fine, yeah,
Oh,
if you ask for it, we can get it, but.
yeah, I have it.
I think that'd be good to add, not just for, so that we're indulging the renters and the owners.
So I have a question, why that's included in the first place? Because you don't include before, like, here, do you want, do you like the rec and this is what it costs? To me, this is leading people into, wow, I only make 50 or 70 or $80,000, Cumberland 154, and I can't buy a house here for 755. Yes, strongly support, like, you're leading people to say, of course, we need more expensive, because blah, blah, blah. I can tell you 5 houses in my neighborhood are for sale, none of them are 755. None of them were over 500, well, one's over 500. But to me, that you're asking for strong support on the bottom by setting that up. And then my second comment is in the boxes, we discussed several times, affordable lowercase a housing, lowercase h versus capital H, and how confusing that was to people. And this question to develop more affordable housing. 5 years from now, the town council is going to be, but they said they wanted affordable housing with capital A. Of course, we're going to bring in a good town, just what happened with Round Road. So shouldn't it be more something along the lines of diverse price points or economically accessible, whatever the word is, and staying away from affordable housing, which particularly in this town right now means ding, 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 Round Road.
But before you get, let's sort of take the questions in the sequence in which they're being offered. First one was, should we add in rental housing, the median rental housing costs? Was there a consensus on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the reason for including this, I see what you're saying, Jana, and I agree with that sentiment, but I also think that it's important for people to, it's because it's sobering, I think, to look at this. It's dramatic. And I do think that it underscores the severity of the problem that we're facing. And it has been a long problem. As I was reviewing the housing information from previous comprehensive plan, this has been a problem since the 70s, literally. And it's only getting worse and worse and worse the longer that we don't address it somehow. So I do kind of feel like people need that, like, this is bad. I mean, some people don't really realize, aren't paying attention to the real estate market or whatever, and they don't realize how expensive things have gotten in this town and how, it's like a chicken and egg kind of situation where you have like, this median income is ridiculously high. I agree. But that's because that's the only people who can afford to live here at this point. Most of us, came in before that. And so it's like, if you want to buy a house in Cumberland, you have to make it, at least that. But I'm going to argue that point because I don't make that. That as somebody who has looked and continues to look at the real estate market, because am I going to be able to afford to live here after revaluation? I know what my house is worth. I've had it, appraised. I've looked in other towns, the towns we would consider lesser, the Wyndhams, the Gorms, or whatever. I'm not getting a nicer house than I have now. I'm getting the same house I have now, if not less than. So we have this inflated view of us that our houses are exponentially more expensive. They're expensive everywhere. We have $755,000 houses. We build $755,000 houses. That's another issue of, can we address developers or whatever to build a more diverse housing stock? But to imply that Cumberland is expensive because we're so fabulous, everybody wants to live here, and we're a 2,500 square foot house with 3 bathrooms and a 2-car garage is this in Cumberland, and 10%, 5%, whatever percent less in gray is completely, utterly false. It absolutely is. I've looked, I'm now working in Augusta. I'm now looking at real estate markets from here to Augusta, and I couldn't buy in Augusta a house that much more nicer than. But that's right, but you bought at a different time. So I'm basing it on my value. I know what my value is now. So if my house is probably worth, it's been a little bit since the realtor looked at it. I could probably get 425 from my house.
But this is the data. So, and we aren't just talking about Cumberland. We have it with Cumberland County and the state. So we're
Right,
not
but
trying-
this is saying that, oh, look, Cumberland houses are so much more expensive.
because they are,
Because they
that's
are.
the data.
The same house is not more expensive. That's what I'm saying. We are implying, and we continue to imply, we always imply that Cumberland is more expensive. Cumberland has bigger, more expensive houses for sale, completely different.
I mean,
And
I don't agree with
like,
that.
the $750,000 house in Cumberland is $755,000 in, or maybe it's $745 in
Okay,
gray.
one of the
Like, it's
scientists.
not,
Let's go,
So the purpose of the comprehensive plan is to draw the input of the community.
Right.
And right or wrong, we may or may not agree with what the community says. And as a sitting council member, I have my own ideas about how I can effectuate some affordable housing. And I'm not going to, wait, or I'm not going to rely on some level on the comp plan, that I feel strongly enough that I want to try to initiate some things. But I think, and that's on the same token, I really don't want to engage in a lot of conversation around the table, because I want to sit back and make sure that the comprehensive plan committee is engaging in the conversations, as unpleasant and difficult as they may be. But I think really we want to, if we find that the community only wants $2 million homes, there you go. And maybe we all move out and start our own community someplace. But I think that we have to draw people's opinions out and get the feedback of the data.
I think you had a very good point that got lost almost immediately, which I heard, which was regardless of the context of this question and similar questions are the type of questions where people will, it's called haloing, I think, where they answer the way they think is right and moral and just, and not how they feel. So I thought that was a good point, because I think we should ask it this way, but if we do, are we going to get a skewed result towards strongly support? Because I think when people see the numbers, they feel that way. But then I think, like Christian said, this is just the tip. So even if we ask a question here that is leading, intentionally or not, we're going to have a whole public input session workshop that's going to dive into housing. So it's not going to mislead us. So I guess it's just what I was thinking.
I think it's deliberately leading people down a path, but I think it's also not giving them, I live in West Cumberland, we have it's gonna be what, $500,000 houses? Those are affordable housing. It's 120% of median, so $180,000 is affordable housing in Cumberland. That doesn't say that in that first question. So am I saying, yes, I strongly support more affordable housing? I don't strongly support the town investing funds or giving land to build $500,000 houses for people who make twice as much money as I do.
But we're not going to get that nuanced answer in a survey.
Right, but I think you're forcing them into, people know what to, do you want more affordable housing that's more diverse, economically diverse in Cumberland? Yes, yes, no, indifferent, whatever. But if you're looking at, oh, house is 755, yes, I want a house that's less than 7, I would say yes to that. But I know there are houses less than 755.
Will the way this written ruin our data or make it more difficult?
I think the paragraph's leading. It just on a pure survey basis, I think the paragraph is leading.
Yeah.
I don't think, I'd stop short of suggesting data is leading. People are smart enough to come to their own conclusions. So that's where I would split right down the middle. I think the paragraph is very leading. I think it will skew your data. But you also have to give people credit to read data that's real, that came from sales of homes. And that's on them if they want to halo themselves just with the numbers, that's on them. But I do agree that the paragraph is leading. Data can't be leading, it's data. It's uncomfortable. That's not data's problem. So from the guy looking at inside, I would eliminate the paragraph and let the data stay the way it is.
Can I follow up with that with, because this point, I think to be what Janet was saying, which is the use of the word affordable. And I think that was something that we flagged, you all had flagged as like, we need to get into this a little bit more, but we can move this forward. I think there are other ways to address that, such as income restricted, or some other word that isn't as, could mean so many different things than affordable. So I think
Well,
that.
that's the question. Is that what they mean is income restricted?
And-
Or do you mean
and-
a variety?
And so I think that point is very well taken, and those two things together between
Right.
is the information possibly leading, or the way it's presented possibly leading, and regardless of that answer, is that the right term to use?
Right.
I think that second question is something that the survey committee did flag to their credit as well. So I think that does require a little bit more finessing or.
Okay, I think Katie was going to first place.
And I'm gonna add to that, and GP cog can be down for that, because I know this is your issue, this is hard. I mean, your issue is everybody's issue, but I would just say that I think this, from like the recent issues you guys had with the one affordable housing, the issue was that people didn't know what affordable housing is, right?
Yep.
I think if you change the word affordable to achievable here, because that doesn't have any, income restricted has something, affordable housing has something attached to it. If you call it achievable or something that's actually doesn't fit the data, and then to me, that's as unskewed as you're gonna get. I mean, and that would be my suggestion is, I appreciate what Christian's saying, but affordable housing is decidedly not income restricted sometimes, right? So it's, I think the spirit you guys are talking about is achievable housing. I'm just coining that myself, so if you like it, then thanks. That's
You trademark.
but those would be my take.
I don't know if people would understand that word.
Well,
It's achievable by whom?
You call it attainable. But that's the problem with housing, is the second you put an adjective in front of it, now you're going down a rabbit hole, right?
The diverse price
Yeah.
points is.
Yeah, diverse price points,
That's on you guys.
economically diverse, is something.
Right, Maureen?
Yeah, so I was going to, so we're talking about striking the paragraph that follows the table about the median home sales, so striking that entire paragraph. Housing for all versus affordable housing, I don't know, I feel the survey team's pain, because it's like the word we use, the vernacular is affordable housing, and that's kind of this big umbrella that covers all sorts of housing.
In the Affordable Housing Committee, we tossed around the idea of using the phrase workforce housing, because in some ways, you know, that has less negative connotations for people than affordable housing. You know, housing options, and that was kind of one of the aims, was housing options for someone who is not a family and who wants to raise their family here for a long period of time, who might just be working here, what have you, or working in the area. So, you know, we talked about that, and I know that Falmouth used that term, workforce housing.
Yes.
And they have a project that's moving forward, so maybe.
Is that income restricted?
I don't
I don't know if I
remember
would
what the
know.
details are.
If I was taking a survey, I don't know if I would know what that meant. If I was asked a question about workforce housing, I'd be like, that doesn't sound like something that applies to me. I don't know.
Correct, right. That's what like you're talking.
Let's go to Richard if you can.
Is that what we're talking about, or are we talking about?
That's
somebody-
one of the issues.
Folks, I know it's a lot of opinions here, but a lot of folks haven't been heard from yet.
Yeah.
Bridget has her
Just
hand up.
gonna suggest we could just cross out affordable and just local policy changes to encourage the development of more housing.
You're gonna get no's across the board.
Well, that's fine. Right? And then we dive into the fact, then we have one dedicated comp plan meeting around affordable housing. We have one dedicated town workshop around affordable housing. I think anyone, if we start with numbers, and adults are answering this who are familiar with how markets fluctuate, supply and demand. You don't need the word affordable to get the yes, or the no.
I mean, I don't think,
So
We can
who wants to
expect
go
them.
next?
can we expect them to know what, because I was thinking we were talking about economically diverse, so, you know, a $200,000 house and a $500,000 and a $900. So a mix of diverse housing. And then they just brought up workforce housing and income restricted housing. It's like, I don't think we know what questions we're asking, let alone.
I was asking Katie what the term workforce housing meant. I wasn't talking about.
Okay, so I mean, I guess, so that's my question, is, are we asking the question of, should we be building apartment buildings with our income restricted, and that's what we mean? And that's one question, or are we asking, do you want a diverse stock of housing at various price points, blah, blah, blah. So I think we need to know what we're asking.
Bill
before
first.
we decide how to phrase it.
So two points. One, when I had folks in my house take a survey, they said, get rid of the data, numerical data up above. It doesn't matter, right? I don't care what your income is. I don't care what the housing price is. The fact about 30% of your income and stuff like that, well, I agree with Paul, it is certainly misleading. And then in the body of the question down below with all the options, I think we get to the root of what you're speaking about there. These different solutions, how do we get to these different solutions, right? Of policy changes, right? Financial investment in land, right? All these other things kind of get to some of the options that the town could explore in there. What's the thought process behind that?
I just wanted to say that I think that maybe it makes sense to add a comment box. Or maybe there already is one, but basically something that says, what does adding housing or adding diverse housing or whatever, what does that mean to you? One thing that came out of this group that I was not even aware of before I was part of the group was a number of people involved in town who felt very strongly that affordable housing should only be for Cumberland residents. So there were quite a few people and I was like, okay, well, that just wasn't something that I was aware of, but it was a really strong sentiment. And so I feel like that's something that needs to be, I just feel like that was what was missing when we were trying to do our work was when you say you want affordable housing, what do you mean?
Well, okay, let me weigh in here real quickly. I suggested in our committee work, I suggested the data tables up above. These come straight from the Press Herald. Those who read the Press Herald will see that the state and the Maine Association of Realtors periodically publishes this information. And I simply took the most recent data available from the two sources. And I felt it was important for the survey to lay out the fundamentals of the real estate market for those residents of the town who will take the survey. In terms of creating housing that's available only to Cumberland residents, I think there's some major legal problems with that. The housing that the town does own at Hawthorne Court for seniors does, as I recall, Bridget, this goes back some years, create a preference for Cumberland residents. But it's not, strictly speaking, only for Cumberland residents. And I think we were told at the time by the town that you can't do that because there's a constitutional right to move, travel. Okay, and we can get an update on that, but I think it would be difficult. I hesitate to toss that idea out there as if it were a legitimate option. I don't think it is.
So do we have a straw poll, just how people feel strongly for removing or keeping or indifferent about this paragraph?
Yeah.
That was going to be my comment. It's just what we
I just wanted to do about
Get it to that.
whatever particular thing you have.
I have concerns about, I agree that affordable housing has connotations, right? However, it also has terms, especially at the state level and at the Maine Housing Authority level and federally that we look to when we're policy making. We're looking at extending TIP 1 right now. And if we extend TIP 1, 75% of that has to go towards affordable housing or transit. That's defined by the state. And so as we're using this as a committee and also for guiding the long-term vision, I think it's important to be consistent with those terms. Because otherwise, it doesn't really give us anything to move on. And to your point earlier about, we asked the question in 2022 about people, do you support affordable housing in Cumberland? And we got back numbers that were very high, right? It was like 66%. And then we had a 70% no on the project, right? And so as we were kind of doing a postmortem on the Drowned Road project as a council, we want to have a more clear understanding of what would be acceptable to people. And I think that you've done a really great job of doing that in 18 with these different options. I think it might also be not a bad idea, and Bob, I don't know how you feel about this, but maybe looking at things like infrastructure, like water, sewer, because that's also stuff that can help support kind of affordable construction. That could be something in there, but maybe if there's a definition of what affordable housing is, and that could be like a state definition, so that everyone's working off the same thing, and then you go in here. But I think that we just want to be consistent with that language because we need it to make long-term decisions.
You will see in question 21 a reference to both water and sewer extensions. So, and
But,
ultimately they get to that.
but not as connected to housing.
Yeah.
Well,
Is it?
I think
Over here.
I mean, they're sort of all connected, but yeah, you have a good point. Pete.
About development, yeah,
Yeah, but not affordable housing.
development in general.
Yeah.
more in general.
I think due to the nature of the community we live in, if we're looking at a sizable project of any scope, we're gonna have to have water and sewer. That's one way we can have, we don't, just can't put it out in the middle of the field and expect it to work. So it's, you can do community septic systems, but they're really not very practical long term. I think we would be looking at Route 1, 88, Tower Road, or that kind of a development.
I just want to echo what Dick said. I mean, I do think that if we wanted to keep the term affordable housing, citing to a neutral authority state elsewhere would probably be useful. And that way, I also think that with these examples, we could spend a lot of time trying to finesse this, and we're not going to make everybody happy. This is a lightning rod issue. We're going to get mixed responses, and this is an iterative process. We're going to have lots of other opportunities to have members of our community talk about it. So I really commend the work that has been done. I like the idea of taking out the extemporaneous commentary here with I like the data, but I am supportive of affordable housing with the citation. So I don't know if we want to do a straw poll among other things to move us along forward.
Well, Bridget, you, I think you used the term national financial nuance.
It was HUD, right? Not
And I
that
thought it
one.
was,
No, I wrote that.
oh, you,
So I just pulled up, so HUD's definition of affordable housing is generally defined as housing on which the occupant is paying no more than 30% of gross income for housing costs, including utilities, taxes, and usually maintenance fees.
So maybe we say,
It's not the end all be all, because if we're talking about affordability from the state's perspective, there are financial implications for that affordable housing is between 50 and 80% of AMI, and AMI for Cumberland, according to state law, would fall under Portland Metro region, which is about 129,000. So when we're talking about workforce housing, generally we're talking about income restricted between 50 and 80% of AMI.
so Nancy, do you like the federal definition? The purpose of the survey?
It's certainly less
Leading to the term.
I do. I think it's more of a higher level, less nuanced. I really appreciate what you just said. That was a learning experience right there.
So much.
Right. But, we can't devote this survey to educating people about the nuances there. So if we need to have a citation, perhaps that HUD one it's already in there. We just cite it to HUD.
That's a good way to go. And I think one of the commentaries was, has to be some sort of level of understanding of what affordable is, and a lot of people, you know, and without having to do the math or whatever, a simple definition, most people get there because they just.
And
that
then
was
we
the
get that,
commentary I heard.
we get that nuanced detail that you guys need for town council in the next iteration of
Yeah.
public meetings and outreach.
Well, let me suggest that we, and someone else, I guess Evan suggested that we to take this, we do some straw polling here and take this topic in sections. And so the first section would be basically two data tables, regarding income and median home sales prices. How do people feel about retaining those in question? Those in favor? Opposed? Do you count, do you have a rough count, Mr. You?
Mostly we're in favor of keeping it.
So I was gonna write down.
Well, you want, maybe,
You said straw poll, so I wasn't recording, but are we voting?
Yeah, I thought that was the point of the straw poll. So you
Yeah.
Just feel everyone out.
Yeah.
So that's nice.
all right, so you record.
I don't feel strongly one way or the other. I'm inclined to keep it.
Neutral.
But you've recorded the majority vote, the majority.
I put
sentiment.
the majority was in favor of leaving the data.
All right,
How many people was
A lot of people know what it is, so.
then the next section is the narrative paragraph that follows. And we've just discussed substituting, referencing the HUD as the source of this definition.
Before you do that, do you wanna add rental costs?
Oh, yeah. Yes,
So what is that? What was the question?
Adding a median rental to the data tables.
And just for reference, using the HUD definition and area median income affordability between 80% and 120% of AMI would be $1,850 a month to $2,790 a month is considered
For rent.
affordable for rentals.
For rent.
Just so everybody knows what we're talking.
But we'll talk, we can. pull-
Yeah, I just wanted
we
to,
can
get
pull actual data from.
Yeah.
So, and then just heads up, 91%, of homes in Cumberland are owner occupied, 9% are rented. In the town. The census,
Oh, we had a study from 2023 and it was, we got it as 23% are renter, or sorry, 26% are renter occupied.
so
Just, I guess, I'll make sure you have it, but.
yeah, like American Community Survey data from 2023 in disagreement with that, I guess.
This was the LDS thing that we did last. Anyway. Interesting.
okay. So do we want to show of hands on the narrative paragraph?
Sorry, can you say that? I couldn't quite hear you.
Oh,
speak.
so, yeah, we want to do then the consensus,
So
on
the-
the paragraph.
Place it with the HUD definition.
Let's switch it to the definition.
But did we want to, I heard some dialogue earlier about maybe the second and third sentences. Is this sort of focusing people in a way that might,
Right, so strike the paragraph, replace with just the HUD definition.
yes,
Yes.
thank you.
I see what you're saying.
That's the motion or
That's the
straw
motion.
poll or whatever term.
Mhm.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Is that understood by?
No. So does that then imply that the next questions are you in favor of building HUD housing? If you're reading that, you read that paragraph
According
and
to
then answered the
HUD,
question,
The
right?
definition of affordable housing is that no more than 30% of a family's income is utilized for housing expenses, including mortgage, rent, utilities, and taxes.
Correct. So you're just a random person. You're not somebody sitting here. You've read that paragraph.
Okay.
And your next question is, do you approve or whatever, affordable housing? Do you not now read that as HUD housing?
I don't know.
Everyone's gonna, yeah, it's a good
I
question.
I don't think
Everyone's
we
gonna
can
interpret it.
jump into every person that's gonna do the survey, how they're gonna interpret this.
I think most people are going to interpret that way.
I disagree. I disagree.
Can you say
I
it's
think-
according to the federal government instead of?
Yeah, right, government.
I just think we're trying to lead people into, yes, we want to build apartment complexes using HUD funds or state funds or whatever. That's where we're trying to lead them to.
Just say.
We,
If you consider
With these
affordable
questions, that's where I think it's
is
leading the people
No more
to.
than 30%.
I think we just need to move forward.
Okay, so the,
Because we're dead set on saying, using the word affordable housing, now we're throwing HUD in there, so that's now HUD affordable housing. Right, right? I mean,
Just
We have some citation though. We have to pick a line somewhere, you know?
the definition, the term affordable housing has a lot of baggage, to be sure, but it's been used for some period of time here in town. I think, Bridget, you mentioned the 1973 plan referred to affordable housing, something closely analogous to it. Every plan since that time has used the term. So I'm frankly in favor of retention of the term because it's got some currency with people and if you use something different, they're just going to ask, what are you talking about here?
May I suggest that we just take the first sentence in there and just leave that and get the rest
Yeah,
of
well,
it?
that's what I thought Meg suggested.
National
and that's-
financial norms suggest that 30%. You don't have HUD in there, you don't have anything else in there, just
Okay.
say,
Okay, so we don't.
and then the rest of it, then get away from the workforce, maybe more workforce leading.
Okay. So the
And-
first.
I was gonna say, when we read this data, we can look at it with an understanding that we know that people are gonna halo towards, they support it because they are told, they feel, they think that's the right, that's the moral thing. And so practically speaking, when we get the results, as long as we're thinking about this, I still think we can do good work with it, and it's not something that will like have to throw out results or something.
no, I just think you're setting up future town council who comes forward with well-meaning intent with the Brown Road project because so many people said they supported it. And it wasn't what people necessarily meant when they said affordable housing. They didn't mean town property. They didn't mean town funds. They meant, yes, I want my kids to build a afford to live here. I want.
I'm
to be able to
gonna
continue
play
to-
the dark person in the room. I think what they meant was not in my backyard
I agree
is
with
what happened in the end. That's what happened in the town. Is that people on the surface believe that we should take care of people and we should have housing for everybody in our community, and that includes affordable housing. But when it came to where it was going to be and on the land, I think that people were like, I mean, I saw the comments on Facebook and Instagram. What kind of people are gonna come in there? And I'm like, whoa, whoa, I was really surprised. I was really shocked that those sentiments were in this town.
That happened when the condos went in on the railroad. We had some people on Skillman's Road that he was completely upset about, you know, people coming out of Portland that was poor and and everything.
So
Yeah.
It's a tough topic. I'm not trying to diminish all of, the information that you're sharing with all of us. But we're not gonna, I think the survey is just to start pulling some data out of the community. And then we're going to refine it with additional public engagement on very specific topics.
You're gonna get almost unanimous support for affordable housing.
Yes, absolutely.
If you follow the papers at all, recently there was a development down in Saco. And there was another one, the town is, escaping me now, but.
South Portland did one that failed. Cable is. the
So
one that
it's really, the trigger is where.
Mhm,
The
yes.
Trigger is how big.
And where?
So I think,
But the trigger is also the school struggle.
Yeah.
well, we're gonna
Having
get
it
to
be
that.
another one.
We'll get to that.
Only pack one issue at a time. Please,
Yeah.
please.
Sorry.
practically speaking, is there any more people that you are gonna convince here now to nix that?
Well, so what Bob just said,
If not,
South Portland, or you just said, South Portland built one, Scarborough built one.
Yeah.
So they
So that's
denied.
talking-
they
Voted down.
Right, but that's because you're talking one.
They
You're talking,
denied them.
you're
No, they
talking,
denied them. No, they didn't construct them. They
Well,
had
but
no.
whatever, you're talking a project, not a general consensus of like housing affordability across town. So the question we're asking here based on those like you both just took it as an affordable housing project, an apartment here, or whatever. So is that what we're asking? And it sounds like that's what we're asking, is you,
No,
that's what we're intending to ask, let me say that.
no, not at all. That's why I look at those things, because in
Right.
that, do you, so you've got to look at these in the context in a way as well, because like, what are the alternate types of housings that you would like to see? An accessory dwelling unit, right? Multi-family housing, right? So I think if we don't, it is good going through and looking at this the way we are, but I think we almost have to look at the entire section in there, because you almost have to take the section.
But you're going through the checklist and doing the thing, you're not.
Fair enough. But yeah,
But-
we're trying to,
But I don't understand why
I'm not-
we're
we
so
can't
dead
do it
set on
that
using
way.
the phrase affordable housing. Unless that's what we mean is a complex like that, a complex like this.
Well,
that, or the other.
let's take the temperature of the group.
Yeah.
The proposal is to use only the first sentence as drafted of the paragraph and delete the rest. Have I stated that correctly? Is that
Yep.
everyone's
Yep.
understanding?
Yeah.
Okay. Those in favor? You have what you need? Okay. So then we go to the, what is, well, currently was question 18, which is the series of questions and the measuring support. Which one? And it is followed by the option for comment at the end.
So Bridget's idea was to just strike the word affordable, and it's just local policy changes to encourage the development of more housing. Construct more housing.
like, get rid of the lightning rod.
I think,
I don't know.
yeah, what Jan said, when you remove affordable housing and being on the planning board, I can tell you, people are gonna be like, we don't want any more housing, no more development.
the opposite problem.
Yeah, that is, the opposite.
And I'm now remembering Tig's comment about needing affordable in order for it to be helpful for policymakers.
Yeah, fair enough.
And that's, because that's the vernacular that you guys are going to be.
But it's technical.
And we're also trying to understand what would be acceptable to the town. Like, yes, there was ground roadkill for a number of reasons, but if you have this survey data from 2022 that said you should do this, and then you had a 70% referendum that said absolutely not, like,
There's a disconnect.
Right.
there's a huge disconnect. And
Mhm.
I know we'll get to the crux of it with the conversations, but like, it'd be good to have some usable data that helps guide us.
And get the same thing again.
So with
Yeah.
your two questions, the town finance and the town land, does that say affordable housing in a capital A, capital H? Which implies a theme, like, to me, lowercase a, lowercase h is housing that, you know, within my reach. Capital A, capital
Yeah,
H
yeah,
is HUD is something
It's
else.
formal.
So are those two questions, yes, affordable housing, capital? And maybe you do a definition up top of, you know, affordable housing below refers to.
So the state has a non-inflammatory, I think, definition, which is affordable housing means decent, safe, and sanitary dwellings, apartments, or other living accommodations for low and moderate income households. I mean, that's from the state legislature. It's not, it says that Misha has a different one, but that also, I think the decent, safe, and sanitary, right? That's something that I think most people can have consensus on, and it's not a lightning rod, but then you're going back to Chase's Pit, which is none of those.
And yet the town refers to as an affordable housing project.
And that's by Misha though. It's defined as affordable housing based on the main state housing. authority.
So I think the state somehow has to be in there.
Oh, sure.
Because by your own definition, you kind of see what affordable housing is.
I don't think though we can solve, we can't solve the affordable housing question issue on this survey.
No.
Right? I think the only thing we can do is maybe get some idea as to some ideas that people might support to move it forward and see if there's some things that we would change in town over time. We're not gonna solve the affordable housing thing here, this survey. Right?
I also don't think we're moving the needle of opinion of people at the table either. Personally, unless anyone else feels, I feel like you moved me to want to strike most of that paragraph. Other than that, I don't feel myself moving towards making any other changes to question 18 or 20. I mean,
All right, so I think before us then is consideration of the various questions under 18 on the draft candidates tonight. Now, I guess we number to 20. Those who support retention of the questions as drafted, please indicate.
So you took it 18, 19, and 20?
Just
just the box here.
Oh, okay.
Which is 18, now 20 on the screen.
Okay.
Majority in favor of keeping them.
Let's hope we have a lot of comments.
I mean, honestly, that's my and I don't know how to, because there's so many varied opinions on what, and like Tig's definition that she just gave of, affordable housing sounds great. And I think that's honestly what a lot of people think of. They think, oh, something that someone who's making minimum wage or something could afford. And that's one of the reasons why maybe Drown Road felt like, oh my gosh, these are going to be really expensive. And it's like, well, no, we're using, where most of us are making a fair amount, and so I guess it's just difficult to really suss out what people mean, when they say they want affordable housing. And sometimes it's also seniors who are saying, I want my house to not be worth as much as it is because they want their taxes to be a more reasonable thing. So sometimes that's what's in their head when they're thinking affordable housing. So there's just such a variety of things. And, I don't know that we're going to get the right answer no matter what we do or all the answers or, any of that. But
Real Steve.
He just left the professor doing it.
Yeah, he's
Madam
gone.
Vice Chair.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm happy to move it along.
Yeah.
We move it along without him?
Yeah.
Great.
19.
Yeah, 19. And we chose the 10-year specifically because this is supposed to be a 10-year plan. So we kind of wanted to, if we had long-term questions, we wanted to anchor them to 10 years.
When you say, is it housing costs or is it property taxes, or are property taxes a part of housing costs?
We were thinking all inclusive.
Yeah.
you think that's not clear?
I would pull the string on it because I think you might be going where I might be going is we hear a lot of feedback. I think at the town council and at the planning board about high property taxes.
Mhm.
And the one way you drive it down is you have more commercial properties, right? You have more people paying into the commercial tax base, and we're just not drawing enough commercial into Cumberland to offset what's happening to people's property taxes. And I think it's a big concern, particularly for our residents who have been here for a long time and have seen a tremendous growth in their property tax.
Should we add like a comment box in here? Because maybe some people would say no, but it's only because like electricity costs and like the town is not going to build a power plant. But if it's property tax, that's something that could be useful to us. So I'm just wondering, do we add a comment?
So if we're just talking housing, if you took out afford and just did your ability to remain in Cumberland over the next 10 years, you have to know why that gets to your thing of, no senior housing available, or it gets me to write down, can't afford my taxes, or whatever, but.
Number 13 is, do you see yourself living in Cumberland in 10 years? And we have a yes, no, unsure. Maybe we should add a comment now that we're talking about it. But do you think there's a different question to ask there?
Well,
Or
I feel like in this one, we're asking like.
specific to housing?
Financially.
Financially,
Yeah.
Right.
Financially.
On some level, I wish there was a way to educate people a little bit before they sat out of this. It's not
In your dreams.
You can't expect people to say, my taxes are too high because of my valuation. Because that's just not true. Your taxes are too high is because your town and your school is spending too much. And the valuation is just a placeholder today. And so if you I don't care if my house is worth $500,000 or $1.5 million. My taxes are gonna be, gonna go up 3% a year. And I think if there's a way to articulate that to people, to say, okay, this is what's going to happen. Their taxes are gonna go up 30% in 10 years. Regardless of the evaluation. I think people would look at it a little bit differently. They wouldn't feel the panic of, oh my God, my house has doubled in value. If we could relate it to the expense, the expenditure.
But don't forget, this is also just a temperature check, like we said before, so.
Yeah. Okay.
So we're good with that one.
Good. Or what would it do, like financially afford to live in Cumberland? What would that take out housing? Is that proper information? Or not? Because that way,
Jana had
yeah.
a idea. I mean, this is the housing section,
Right,
so. we
right.
can
Just
mention housing.
Trying to get at specifically housing costs. I'm wondering if it's not intuitive that property taxes are included in that, or if that is
Yeah.
clear when people say
Yeah.
housing costs. If they
It
are.
wasn't intuitive to me.
Okay.
Yeah, fair. I mean, I'm still with that hammers, but like, I think it would not be that.
So above, we've agreed that national financial norms recommend that 30% of family's income, including for housing expenses, which include mortgage, rent, utilities, and taxes. So
Oh, yeah, that is just
Feel
one
like
question
they're
before
covered.
this.
ability to afford housing costs.
That's true. It is, but you're also imagine, like, think how quickly people go through stuff, right? So it might not be bad just to do in parentheses, afford like housing costs, utilities, taxes and mortgage, right? And then,
Yeah, it's just clarity.
yeah, it's just clear and it's right in front of them.
Sorry, Marcia. Try making you do more work.
Well, at least it's not 120 questions anymore, or whatever we started with. so.
Better.
Are we doing comment box?
Where did we land on comment box?
So 21 is revised.
I almost think it's better to have a comment box.
That's, we'll show of hands. Those in favor? On to the last question, I think, no, I'm sorry. Yeah, the last question in the section. We asked the respondents to select types of houses they want to see, types of dwellings want to see.
Should we, you said types of houses we want to see, but it says we believe are most needed. Are we gonna get a different response from someone? Like they're, to play devil's advocate, sorry, just from a clarity standpoint. This is what I think is most needed, but this is what I would most like, could be different answers, potentially.
I mean, I think it should be more what do you support in your neighborhood, because you're absolutely right. It's not in my backyard. Do I think apartments would be great? Sure, just not next to my $8,000. And if this again sets the town council for failure, if you're gonna announce a complex of 100 duplexes tomorrow, and it's gonna be like, I don't object, you put a duplex next to me, super, put an apartment, triplex next to me, super, you put 100 duplexes next to me, that's when people pitch it. And then they come back and say, what you said. So I don't know how you answer that in a survey, but it doesn't fully answer the,
Is anyone here on the
other than
planning board?
accessory maybe.
I'm on the planning board, yeah.
Question. All of these are currently permissible in most zones. What would you do with the data from this question currently written?
We don't do anything with the data because we're a quasi judicial board. And basically when a proposal comes before the board, it's been already vetted through multiple layers. Bridget, you can speak to that. And so what we're doing is we're looking to make sure that they're following all the zoning rules, the ordinances, the design standards. And if it's check, 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 we have no authority to say, well, we don't like it.
So
That's essentially, I mean, we have the two areas that we spend the most time talking about are buffering. I think lighting. We hear about noise. But, you know, essentially, it's people are protecting their environment from what might be happening around.
So
Yeah.
if everyone in town is like, let's get their 1/8 acre lots.
Well, that-
who-
That's a
that-
zoning change.
Council would do it.
That's a
Yeah.
council.
They would
Okay,
have to.
so
go
that's sort of my
through-
question. is-
Zoning changes have to go through the planning board as well.
Got it. So this is a
Yeah.
question that the town council is interested in the data from. Well, in addition to all of us, but I'm just,
And it's also the planning board's charge to develop the comprehensive plan for
Right.
the council. So,
Right.
But is there anywhere these aren't allowed already?
yes.
but most of them are allowed. I mean, I guess I don't have any changes for it. I was just curious.
There,
Is there anything new?
like an
we're missing?
apartment building would have you would have to meet certain density requirements, which things like sewer would allow you to have a smaller density. So there are restrictions on where you can build these. I don't know off the top of my head. I'd have to look at the ordinance.
I think this just gives people more of a, what do you want to see, right? It's not directing policy, it's taking people's temperature.
But I like your thought actually of like changing instead of believe or most needed to support.
To neighbor.
What types of housing,
Needed is probably not the best wording.
just because to your point, there could be that dissonance.
Yeah. Do we want to put support in? What do you think?
What about in the neighborhood? I kind of like the
Yeah,
neighborhood.
I thought that was also a good
Town.
point.
In your neighborhood.
Also, as a YIMBY, I saw a lot of other people's neighborhoods.
Yeah. I'm saying the Western
Yeah.
Incentive, they all- Yeah.
I'd like to see
Except
more
for
grass.
Yes.
Mobile homes by state law are allowed anywhere in town. I don't know
I
if
asked
our
that
ordinance has been
question,
updated to reflect that, but by state law, they're allowed everywhere in town.
Did talk about
I
that.
did remember doing manufactured, to your point, I think we updated for manufactured homes, but is there a reason not to include that?
That's.
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
mobile.
that-
We did talk about it in the committee.
It's the same thing. You can admit a mobile home or it's a single family home.
Yeah, that was the answer. That's
Or
what
a
I
duplex.
decided to not add it.
How do people feel about what types of housing? So, yeah, so we were talking about neighborhood. Is that something we don't want to say? Do we not want to get that specific? Or want to keep that just in Cumberland? So what types of housing do you support in Cumberland?
I think switching this frame of reference halfway through the survey is probably not.
Right.
Although it's super
Oh, yeah, good
compelling,
point.
that
Right.
this is a town, it's about the town. And
It's true.
yeah,
That's true.
I love it, but I think you have to keep the
Good
town,
point.
it's the topic's the town.
That's a good point.
You could do that in the meetings, though.
Yeah.
Sure. Oh, for sure.
We all,
Yeah.
we all know it's implied West Cumberland. and we're
I think that's like expressing the point of those meetings though, is to have those gatherings, and to get those inputs about the neighborhood.
Each department, we should define size.
What are-
All right,
what-
so-
so what are the words?
What types of housing do you support?
There we can be.
Yeah,
Subterranean.
yeah, just a nice little.
Should apartments be defined? Because there's a difference between obviously the mark, which is now apartments, which is how many, 200 units or whatever it is, or a, triplex next to you is, I wouldn't mind a triplex next to me if the mark moved in next
Is
to
a
me.
multiplex difference? Like, would that be?
That's a sentiment.
I don't think we should define them. I just think it's too much detail that won't add any value to the.
But that was part of the objection of Brown Road was the size of the
Yeah,
apartments. and
no, but I think with this level of the temperature check of the survey, it won't give us any additional like useful information.
Stuff came out.
We should, I mean.
No, I'm gonna take it out. I know. where-
Like, are duplex or multiplexes, like what people might think of like as a small apartment building? I don't know.
That's just a grammar thing.
You think like two apartments, but
Well,
like,
we duplex,
like a
that.
3-story apartment is different, like. you
Yeah,
have marked down the
based on
line.
Route 1 and Yarmouth. Fall into the.
Could we talk about a multiplex? Okay.
Actually, it's more than that because it has commercial space.
Oh, it's that new, yes, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Again, bear in mind how much reworking will take place between the issuance of the survey and final presentation of a report to the council, which goes through the whole planning board process, which can then our report, and then the council's adoption process, and then whatever the planning board sends to it based upon all public input, but the council can separate. So,
We can't wait.
there will be lots of layers of filtration before you
Yeah.
actual adopted. So, I mean, a lot of concerns are legitimate, but I wouldn't get over concerned about any of them at this point. So long as we're getting genuinely, turn up. So are we okay with 22?
As amended.
Mixed. Right. Useful, okay. Yes.
Right, it's the, yeah, the new.
Yes, okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Michelle. Right, those in favor? You have, yeah. All right. Okay, next is growth and development. So this is, this begins with a map of the town, which highlights those areas which are currently zoned in part or whole for commercial purposes. Most of them actually are mixed. But when we talked about the concept of commercial development in the subcommittee, we all sort of had to acknowledge that many of us, to say nothing of the townspeople at large, don't know where the commercial zones are currently, how they're shaped, how big they are. And I thought it was useful to put that right up front in the survey itself, so there could be no question about that. So the questions for question 20, whether it's now 23, focuses on the areas as shown on the map. And it asks, let's see, what is your level of support for basically increasing various types of, well, increasing commercial land use and some of the services necessary to sustain that new use? Fairly non-specific in nature. 22 and 23 do really require the respondent to be more specific in giving their answer. And if someone supports further commercial development, tell us in which of the zones, which of the existing zones should be expanded to accommodate that development. Question that follows essentially says, if you support commercial development, where would you create new commercial zones in the vast light gray area of the town? And so it's designed to basically elicit support for not only the maximum use of current zones, but the potential creation of more zones allowing commercial development, if that is believed to be a desirable goal for the town. Some questions on this fairly short section.
I don't think increasing commercial land use for development is clear. If the intent is, do you support changing zones that are currently residential to commercial? That should be what's asked. Or residential areas near commercial, because hell yes, we need more commercial zones. Everybody in their right mind is going to say yes. But if you're in a budding neighborhood to one of those and you suddenly need, or Main Street's a perfect example, that the town in their infinite wisdom made Main Street residential and then tried to backtrack and make it business again, and the people freaked. If that's what you're asking, their answer is no. If you're asking them, do we need more commercial areas? Their answer is yes. So you need to tell them what that means, because that's not at all clear. That's saying, do you want to make any currently residential or mixed use areas commercial? You got to say that.
Well, that you couldn't do that because every existing use is grandfathered. So the idea of taking a commercial area and making it taking a residential area and making it exclusively commercial is impossible. Every non-conforming use is grandfathered.
Right. I mean, it's grandfathered for now, but if you were to say, like, I'm not saying this is gonna happen, but if you were to change all of Main Street to commercial zoning, what's there is there, but if someone wanted to come in and buy something that was for sale, take it down and put, you know, a McDonald's or whatever, potentially they could.
We did do that exercise. We took Middle Road from, Tuttle Road to Yarmouth. We was over to commercial. But what we didn't take into account is one woman owned all that land from Green Road to Yarmouth, Mrs. Burr. And, you know, she fought it for years, because she basically said, I'm going to give it to my children. And it was every child had to come down here and go through the exercise of getting a special exception, something that child. Before we reintroduced single family homes to that zone, you know, she owned all the land.
I agree with Jenna's point there about there is something in there to change zoning to encourage commercial or to allow for more commercial development. I think
that could be clear.
That's a good, because it is what you have to do, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Unless we go to contract zones, which
Yes.
we don't want to.
But again, I think you're gonna get everybody saying yes until you try to do it in their neighborhood
Oh,
and then
it's
they're
just,
coming with a pitchfork.
it's the knot in my backyard and it's gonna happen no matter where we go, right?
Which is completely understandable.
Should we go back to that one?
It's completely understandable. It's like I didn't buy, you know, in my quaint little neighborhood to live next to McDonald's.
Just wanted another coffee shop.
Marijuana shop,
What? Oh.
marijuana shop.
Yeah, medical marijuana gas stations. We don't have nearly enough in our neighborhood.
So would like change zoning to increase commercial land use? Like, how would we rephrase that to make it more clear?
I mean, it's the question, make more residential areas mixed use is what you're asking. But then I think you need to ask, I mean, are we asking the question, yeah, which areas do you mean? Because if you get a lot of Foresight people saying, oh, yes, make Skillen Road, and a lot of people on Skillen Road saying Route 88 is cheaper, let's build there, you know, that kind of negates.
We do that with 22, right?
Yeah, we
Right,
discussed
good.
this in the subcommittee and, you know, my thought was like, okay, how would I answer this? And for me, it's like, I personally would like to see more mixed use. I'm not sure I'd want to see more heavy industrial, but both of those are commercial.
Yep.
So I almost thought this question was too vague, but I don't feel particularly strong about it either way.
I don't know if it's a question for the people. And I normally think most questions
This
are
is
for the
included
people.
because it was
I think
in
it's
the
too
old
complex.
one.
Yeah.
And part of what we wanted to do was not necessarily compare apples to apples to the last survey, but at least some have similar themes so that we could track any sort of change in sentiments over the years. And this is definitely one of the questions that was in the old survey.
I mean, is it, let me play this devil's advocate, is it needed in the next 10 years? Do we need increased land area? Because you still have considerable, you haven't touched Route 100. Route 1, I'll also make it, like, it's a false flag for people where it's like, we get more business, our taxes will go down. Route 1 has gone from a 250 valuation to 42 million. And now now when we're about to see the payoff, they're talking, should we use the STIP money to build housing? So it's like, and everybody's going, yay, gas station in West Cumberland, at least they pay taxes. That those tax monies go to the TIF fund to develop the zone. You're not seeing squat for 20 years or whatever it is. So it's somewhat of a false flag to be like, you know, yeah, oh, hell yes, let's, if you're creating a new zone, it's probably a TIF zone and you're not getting any money from it. So, and people are really willing to sacrifice somebody else's neighborhood and not their home. So, I mean, realistically, we're talking Route 100, Route 1. You know,
What's
a
valuable
little,
to the-
little tiny square along with Main Street.
What's valuable as a counselor to know, I guess, would be my question.
I was looking for an email I had some weeks ago from TIG about, which sort of enumerated the issues that were brought to the council, and I think that was among the list questions dealing with commercial uses. Is that
Yep.
correct?
I mean, we haven't hit 10% yet. We're hoping to hit 10% of, we're not there yet. So, there are places currently, I don't, what do you think, Bob?
So CN Brown's got a gas station up on Main Street. They pull the tanks out. It's gonna go up for sale. And my position is the town manager, call them up, find out what they want for that. Let's get ourselves in a position to be actively engaged in how that plays out. And that might be, overstepping my role as a counselor, but it's being proactive in making sure that what happens there is beneficial for the whole community. And on some level, I'm gonna take a chance that I could hopefully can pull something off that is beneficial to the community. So I think, the role of the council is twofold. It's taking the data from the comp plan, but it's also exercising it's being proactive. And sometimes it's not, the contract zone, and George Turner hated contract zone. Sometimes it's those are the things that benefit the community. Get to take a call and say, hey, would you like to locate your business here? We could help you with the zoning.
I would find it useful to know, like, do you want our parcel of Route 1 to look like the parcel of Route 1 in Falmouth? Like, I would just like to know what the community wants. Like, do you want us to have massive amounts of businesses the way that Falmouth does on that parcel of Route 1? Like those are the types of things, like, I mean, we can't, we haven't hit 10%, right? So how do we, if people say, we want more businesses, we are asking, well done, the question of what types of businesses would you like to see? But we also have to do something to make ourselves attractive to businesses, the right businesses. So understanding kind of what the community would want in what areas of town, I think would also be helpful, especially as, we look to whether or not we wanted to bring in like an economic development director or finance, which, you know what I mean? Like, if there are going to be certain areas, it would be good to mark those areas, right? And know that people support that.
I think we've asked that question before in previous comp plans. What kind of businesses do you want?
Yes.
And
Cute little bakeries. Yeah.
and nothing frankly materialized out of it, right?
Yeah.
So I think
There's nothing.
what's gonna happen in the area is gonna happen in the area that's within the zoning.
Yeah.
And we're not gonna change that frankly by asking what's in there, because we did have a question in here. What kind of businesses would you like to see?
Oh, so the question be what businesses would you use? What types of businesses would you patronize if they were in Cumberland? That's a different question.
Or do you need?
What services do you use elsewhere that you prefer to have closer? Like, those are different questions. Everybody wants a branded place and a cute little bakery and
Need.
Well, it's going to be interesting to watch, I think, the Rusty Lantern, what that looks like when it's finished and the amount of traffic it generates. And does that become kind of an anchor store for attracting other businesses to that area, that commercial area?
So for the purposes of the survey.
Yeah.
So the new 23. I heard from Jana that the first one isn't clear or needs to be maybe more, or we don't ask it. So I don't know.
I don't think it's on now, but.
I feel like that's one of the ones that could have gotten cut. And, like we cut the, do you want a beach, a public beach on the ocean? Well, we did it. We've added a lot of commercial zone in town, right? In your time,
Added what, Kevin?
commercial zones in town in the last 10 years,
No, not in the last 10 years.
or
No.
in my lifetime, maybe.
Well,
Yes.
we've massaged them, in an earlier stage of your life. The Route 100 corridor was entirely commercial, but it consisted of two zones. One at the intersection of Skillen and Route 100, and it was called the highway commercial, and the whole rest of it was called local business. And then in the first decade, we looked at property lines and varying uses, with the Skillen 100 intersection being the most intensive, and the areas spreading south and north less intensive, but commercial all the same. So that whole corridor has been commercial, at least in my experience, for some decades. Because my question generally is whether these three questions in this section are useful to our town councilors, at least from the perspective of where we are tonight, and knowing that there's miles to go.
Let's see. Christian.
I would leave it at that.
Christian might have a comment here.
Oh,
And I'm actually riffing off of Nancy here. I saw her notes. I looked over her shoulder. It sounded like maybe with the new 23, part of it was just clarity. And so maybe we could say something like amending zoning to allow for commercial development in additional areas. And that doesn't get to whether or not that question should be in there or not. But if the question should be in there, just making it more friendly to folks in terms of understanding what we're asking. And that is Nancy's idea.
well, 24 asks, which current zones would you expand? Or which new ones would you create?
Right, so the first question, the first item under the grid is assessing temperature check on, do you support the idea? And then you wanted to have that specificity of, okay, so if you support the idea, then specifically, so I support that. How do people feel about 23 as amended?
We want to say policy changes, because above we say policy changes.
Yes.
Did I capture that accurately?
Yeah.
That now says to me, different businesses where there are already commercial zones, if I don't know what you're talking about.
Policy changes to allow for additional commercial development.
Commercial development in additional areas, I think, was
Or
the
commercial.
to account for the area enlarging or growing.
Well, keep getting redundant now because of what 24 says.
No, that's asking for where.
This is where.
24 already does.
I liked Christian, or Nancy, how she phrased it better, like, it is a policy change and that's all on you, and you all know what, that's how it takes. You're just asking a layperson, like, and do you want this to happen? You know what I mean? Like, to me, that's her phrasing was clear, what you were asking, that's not fair to me.
So I don't. Tell me what you're
I
ready.
hoped to sort of cull out those residents who don't want to see any more commercial development, are happy with what we have now, but those who would like to see more.
Right.
And that's what I thought the first table did.
Yes.
Then, question 24 said, okay,
Yes.
big guy, you want more business? Tell us where.
Yeah, that's where we're getting. Yeah, we're just tweaking the
That's why I
language.
didn't
True,
want
but
to-
to Jenna's point a moment ago, it kind of just sounded like with the first one, increasing commercial land use for development where it currently is. And the nuance here is that it's in new or additional, in new places.
Right.
So it's not increasing the pie where it is, it's, can't even think of the appropriate analogy, just.
Because to me, that's make a policy change so we can have a hotel on Main Street or a hotel on Route, well, you can have a hotel. on
What's your
Route
language?
100, But
Yeah, increase or.
This was with amend,
It's like
right?
amend or a additional land zone for commercial development, but then you said amend zoning to allow for commercial development in additional areas.
Cool.
So I can live with policy changes, but I do agree, at the end of the day, people understand that it is a zone change.
Right, but it's
Yeah.
not where it is now. It's
So
You won't find
this,
sort of policy change in our ordinances.
so this is the proposed
won't-
language.
You won't find policy change in zoning.
Correct.
But you won't, so.
Yeah.
In zoning, okay.
And yeah, an additional, or even new areas. Yeah, when new. We're splitting hairs. New areas.
Additional.
How do people feel about that now?
Additional areas.
Good,
Struggle.
great.
Yeah, and then I
feel like this is gonna be a great
really drives it
long
home. Where?
workshop.
Yes.
It's gonna be a good workshop.
Yes. But can we live with that question?
Yes.
Yes.
Great.
Okay. And the remaining two in the.
Love it.
You all set?
Can you go back up? You have two of the same thing?
Well,
Two and three are the same, but should it be a separate question for residential and a separate question for commercial?
It's water or sewer, they're two different questions.
Oh, it's,
And then
Oh,
that's
yeah, yeah,
up
it
to
is water
you.
and sewer. But should commercial and residential be separate? And my second, and I know it doesn't fit under growth and development, but it should fit somewhere. There should be a question about extending water and sewer to existing neighborhoods somewhere in the comprehensive plan. To address the water issues and what is coming there.
That is.
Under public utilities.
Okay.
it's written down.
I didn't read it.
But that's a good point. If this is, we're talking a lot about commercial, should we strike residential from that?
Oh, we
God,
did it on
backwards.
purpose.
We did it on purpose. Great.
Let's-
I don't
let's-
remember. Let's go.
Vote on whether or not we accept this as it is and then move it on to the next one.
Yeah.
You there?
Sorry, really quick. 24, how are they identifying what zone it is? Are we expecting them?
They have the map.
Yeah, but the
They're
map,
not gonna be able to click on the map.
this map is just blue and gray. You're saying like the gray zone, the blue zone, like it's, right?
Oh, it's a good point.
They're not, the map's not
Well,
interactive.
there's a comment line.
We're
Okay.
hoping that people will
So they say
give neighborhood ideas.
the zones along Route 1 or the zone at the railroad crossing on Longwoods Road or something like that.
Specified it in
Comments.
writing. Do you think that's not practical?
You guys,
There it is.
I find it confusing, but,
Maybe that might just be me.
There's a couple of obvious areas that, some of us would say that's sacred land. And you development on it, but if you take Crossroad, which is that
They say I want it.
corner of Wind Road, Wind Road and Range Road, and that field where they've got they grew the corn stalks there a few years ago and had a maze there. That whole area. If you wanted to take a piece of land and say, okay, let's change this to commercial, it makes sense to do it. It's good land in relationship to the town center, it's good land, it's convenient. It's great farmland too, so.
So for the purposes of this question, Tig, is there a way we can make it easier? If you support increasing the number of businesses in town, please identify where in town.
We're
you'd
just
like
gonna
to
have
be.
or
letters.
like based on the map or
You're
something.
gonna-
That's a great idea. A, B, C, D,
A,
or
B,
E.
C, D, E, we'll have letters.
Yeah, perfect.
Oh,
Otherwise, we're gonna get a bunch of write-ins. We're not, they're gonna be like, we're on this and that.
okay,
Not a bad idea.
got it.
Ring, ding, ding.
so if you support increasing the number of businesses in town, isn't it if you support increasing the land available for businesses, please identify them? Because I'm pretty sure almost nobody is gonna say they don't support businesses in town. But 25 businesses in an existing zone is different than expanding an existing zone.
I kind of read it as though the businesses would come with the land, so I don't know if I'm divorcing it the way that you just read it.
Say that again?
When I read it, when I think about business, I'm also thinking about the location, the land itself too. So I don't know if I'm understanding. You repeat your comment.
I would take this, if you support increasing the numbers of businesses in town, that's a yes or no question?
Right.
Yes, yes, I do.
Right.
Please identify the existing commercial zones you wish to be expanded. Well,
Yep.
I support existing more businesses, but I don't support
In where they're already.
Route 100 being expanded, two extra miles. Like that's two separate questions. So the question is, if you support, the question up top, if you support, allowing additional areas for commercial development, please identify them. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're not asking if they support businesses. The assumption is kind of theirs, they do. The question is, do you support expanding where they can be? And if so, where?
I just wordsmith that.
I can't read it
Yeah.
from here, sorry.
Yeah, you can't, yeah,
Just
oh,
too bad.
tiny, so tiny.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Nice. Ruby.
Oh, yeah, cool.
Okay, are we there?
Yep.
With 24? Is that the last question of the section? Ready? Wait a minute. Go back to 25?
All right, are there any commercial businesses or services you would particularly like seeing?
You've been having trouble with that?
There's any harm in asking. I do
No,
think
I-
that,
I think that's a good question.
you're gonna get a lot of things that just are realistic necessarily, and there's a reason why all of these commercial zones haven't suddenly become actual commercial zones.
Again, we were trying to be responsive to the suggestion of the council, we address these issues. You folks find this helpful,
Yeah.
then I would say go for it.
We'd like to have a dog spot. I'm always, he's happy to take the dog, and always,
All right. So that takes us to the end of utilities. All right, now, folks, let's do a little bit of a gut check here. I have nothing else in the schedule the rest of the night. Some of you may. We're a page and a half away from the end of our first go through. Do you want to duke it out for the next 30 minutes? People got that time? Or do you want to just think about coming back the next time, finish it?
So just a heads up, our next meeting is not until June 12th.
2:12, oh wait.
June 12th. So we have 3 weeks, our next scheduled meeting, I should say.
Schedule.
So if we don't flood through this, it will not be released on June 1st.
And these aren't particularly controversial questions.
Yeah, let's slug it out.
Does
Unless
any,
there's
okay,
adults
so
that
so
need to
maybe,
go home
instead
now.
of we send this as a read ahead, if anyone has any troubles with them, speak up.
I'm gonna take
the
the
liberty
liberty
of- I have to
leave. I did email the group earlier. And then I did mention, just the question about how people are defining the food access was, I don't know if people saw it.
I can see that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that what are we thinking when we say local food access? Because I was wondering if it needs to be more descriptive or, more specific. What environment? Because for me, like, we don't use the word agriculture in farming. Local food access can mean a lot of different things to a lot of people, but this is land use. And so I didn't know if local food access meant.
Blanking. We're-
Yeah.
25.
Yeah, little food market.
Was that like a market or was it, we're ensuring that, farmers can stay farming?
Like, to me,
Local
that's
food
access to local food,
Access, okay.
Or local
that's
food
access
production.
to locally produced food.
Maybe locally produced, if you add the locally produced in there.
I
That,
think that would be more specific. Yeah.
But so what does that mean? Does that mean like farmer's market?
I think it's, by definition, I think it's 400 miles.
Let's not get into
Well, I
that.
Yes, so.
We could have a whole nother meeting on that. But yes, it can be, it's within a couple hundred miles. Typically, we can agree to that. Yeah. By locally produced food, I would make the assumption that that would be locally produced food, including those within Cumberland.
Oh, national.
I would say that that is significantly different from food waste reduction.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've break that out.
good
Nice.
executive decision.
Yep.
Okay, Nancy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, Nancy. Thank you. Does anyone need to leave? I guess that's the question.
Holiday day, my husband has hockey, so.
No.
Blame it on.
But you're
It's time is
doing
grown up.
You tell them that hockey
just
is
go to
not
hockey?
important, that this.
No.
Might
no,
Community
he's
ice
only
rink.
five.
Okay, good, good. I was.
The hockey times would be insane.
I hear, not there yet, but all bonkers, I'm never there, yeah.
Okay, so let's, tough
I
it
like
out.
Bridget's idea.
Bob?
Raise questions if you have them.
So we have public utilities, environment, and transportation.
Yep, utilities, it's a one question topic. Anybody have any
The
issues
only,
there?
the only change we made, and it's like gone from, do you want health phone service in town? Do you want internet in town? We swapped that out for fiber optic.
Fiber optics,
Since
yeah.
everyone else does.
Mhm.
It's run on the poles, it just isn't connected yet.
What is more reliable electricity mean? Like CMP is pretty reliable, but like.
Power, decrease in power outages.
No, get your own back, bro.
We're getting that adequately high water pressure. Bridget?
Still in my snacks.
How many people are gonna answer?
Pass the basket.
Wait, that's for us.
Well, we're-
Yeah, just skip us on the way.
No, we get what we rank here.
So if we're doing more reliable electricity for that, meaning that, could we add water pressure? Which is a massive issue in one certain end of town?
Wouldn't that public water take care of that though?
Yes.
No, because we have public water, we just have no pressure.
I think that's fair. If it's only one person that's gonna answer it, then you leave it under other, but if it's,
It should be like, you should see a skewed thing that, oh, there's an issue in a certain pocket of town, certain. Yeah.
I think, you know, and this is a select all that apply question, right?
Cool. Good.
Okay. Next, environment.
Can we call it aquifer protection? Like in water or groundwater? I assume that's what we mean by water, right?
And I was like, I don't know.
Yeah, and that comes up a lot
Yeah.
at the planning board. People are very concerned about development, specifically the impacts of that.
Sure.
So groundwater, like what's the term?
The aquifer, the aquifer protection, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Good
Yeah.
idea.
The more you pump through it, the more.
Good idea.
Aquifers.
Do we have show?
No, is that what we're talking about, like going for 400 feet, but then.
No, just in, they don't
So,
want people tapping into the same.
Next
area.
question calls on people to express the level of support for future town investment, i.e. spending in the following areas. Anybody have any issues with that? Oh,
Those were all good questions.
Yeah, those are good.
then the last topic is that okay? So transportation.
Increasing the use of solar arrays for residential use or for town, offset town expenses?
We opted, we had that in there as both. We opted to just not quantify it as any particular thing.
There's no mention of trains in here.
It's town,
I know, and I did the question.
town investment in increasing the use of solar arrays, so. Could be for both.
Well, because for residential, obviously it's controversial with the big giant arrays, but
Right.
slapping one on top of the fire station is like, yay.
The question is potential town investment in, so town money to
Okay.
increase these. So whether that's to offset, like whether it's through community solar to offset residential, like actual like Cumberland residents bill,
Okay.
or offset town costs, school costs, kind of. all.
I think it's helpful as is.
Transportation.
Okay. Transportation.
My only comment on transportation was just how I worded the last two. Actually, I had three. Like, I had one that was driving and, I just wanted feedback or if anyone had a better way to word this, like, I feel safe walking in town. I feel safe driving in town. I feel safe riding my bike. Not like I'm gonna get carjacked, but like, I'm not gonna get in a car accident. And,
I think that, I mean, that seems, it was applied to me when I read it. It made
okay,
sense.
that was the only thing I was unsure about when I typed it up.
This is another one. I wonder if it should be neighborhood. Because when I lived in the center, I feel perfectly comfortable walking on Main Street in those side neighborhoods. I would never in all my life walk on the side of the road where I live.
Well, yeah,
We'll be
that's
able
why.
to split by results by like
Yeah.
areas of town, so we can see like.
Right, but I feel safe walking in town.
In the
I don't
town
feel
of
safe.
Cumberland.
Yeah, in all of Cumberland,
Yeah.
overarching, I absolutely do. Go walk in Quinburg all the time, blah, blah, blah. But
Well, I think
I would
that's where
never
you
in my
land
life
is-
walk in my neighborhood.
That's where you land with somewhat disagree as a answer. That's what I was thinking, how I would answer this. It's like, I feel very safe on Main Street and out of road, but walking to my house on Blanchard Road,
Correct, that's what I
I'm
mean.
still alive, which is incredible. So that, for me, I would fill that out as someone.
But I would think that would be helpful to know, because when they're looking at sidewalks, oh, a whole bunch of people on Blanchard Road said, I don't feel
Yeah,
safe.
I guess I was thinking there's,
I'm just trying to use.
yeah, no,
Yeah.
we have more public outreach and
We all want sidewalks. Oh, yeah.
more transportation.
I don't want sidewalks.
The 88 wants that.
Oh, 88 wants sidewalks. So, yeah.
So like, I would find it helpful.
So anyway, that was my own comment on that.
So.
Comment
Kevin, you
box?
do want a question about driving? Is that okay?
Well, I was sort of thinking, because a lot of people feel, rightfully so, that like Route 100 and Skillings Road is a dangerous intersection. And I kind of want to be able to capture that in our transportation.
Yeah, we're getting a rotary.
So,
Puddle of middle too.
yeah, but that's why I feel safe walking or driving in my car or
Could
something.
we add an open-ended question about, are there particular areas in town that need improvement or something?
That's an
Was
interesting
it comment? Yeah.
Yeah,
comment.
because then someone could say, well, Skillings Road is pulling out, it's suicide,
Right.
or like, I don't like to ride my bike.
There are a lot of dump trucks.
Yeah,
So maybe we can
no,
work
I feel
with
like that. And then
other areas of town that need.
are the second to last in the town needs public transportation and the town should invest in public transportation. Is that one question or is that two? They're just very similar.
Well, one is, do we need it and are we willing to pay for it? So you might think we
okay.
need it, but you're not willing to have the town pay for it.
Yeah. Bridget, there's nothing about trains.
That's because I didn't put it in there, Bob, because I love trains, but they are extremely expensive. And I would rather have regular bus service than trains.
I think we should at least ask the
What
question.
kind of
which is-
transportation would you like?
Would public transportation not include trains?
Yeah, I think it could if we just put trains in there. Because we said access to driving,
Connection
walking.
Well, if we
Portland or
say
a wider
Public
area?
transportation, can we expand that to say buses, trains?
On
taxis?
demand.
Even the trolleys like they use in Portland, you know.
Yeah, Bob, I had it in there, but I sort of felt it fell under public transportation.
Well, let's explain. what public transportation is.
And don't forget on-demand transit.
You were,
Isn't that kind of a
So
vibe?
we assumed people knew what affordable housing was, and we can't assume that they transportation.
Yeah.
I know you love it. I agree with you. I think you're brilliant to keep South way open for conversation. Because you never know.
I'm just an advisor, I have no vote.
No.
I just know you, they call it Bob spraying, which I think is hysterical.
All right, we've talked about this. Let's see what we have for.
I need to add driving, but lost my little button.
Should it be biking on town roads?
Thank you.
That's where you're biking roads, right?
Here she added it.
And trails.
Oh, true.
Yeah, that's good, because it could be.
Although trails, when you're talking safety, I'm not gonna get mugged. He's talking.
Well, no, but it could be like, there's like a bridge that has,
And the ones that we maintain, right? Like.
yeah.
How do people feel about adding a question, an open-ended question? Are there something around other areas of town that need safety improvements or something to try to get more specificity?
Yeah, like road safety, I think that's a good
Mhm.
question.
Did you talk
Isn't
about
she big-
safety questions in general, like in more firefighters, building a police
Are your
station?
needs met?
Just,
with
yeah,
the
that was
current,
kind
like,
of
if
the
you can
need.
rate it?
Or they-
Because it includes fire as separate from police.
Because obviously those questions are gonna come up in every, well, police station.
What's the question for the open comment?
Something like, are there areas of town that needs safety improvement, like
Like
roads?
roadway safety improvements,
Trying to keep it.
because that could be driving, that could be biking, that could be walking.
Mhm.
And that was a big topic last year, right? We did the whole Main Street redesign thing, so.
The flashing crosswalks and the speed reminder signs and we've had a lot of things.
There are a bunch of neighborhoods where I feel like we've had a bunch of neighborhood meetings around, speeding, how it'd be good to.
I think it was, are there,
I just always get.
are there roadways?
During the summer, you can't cut through, you have to go down.
Yeah, I would ask specifically to roadways,
You do.
or have a question specific to
Yeah,
roadways.
safety improvements.
Sweet.
I mean, people can say no.
We comfortable with that?
Oh,
Everybody
you
on
got that
board?
other- oh, they ones up top.
Can we move transportation?
Are there other services that are not currently available that you wish the town would provide? And land acquisition for I support or not for land acquisition for future school construction or expansion.
It doesn't hurt to ask, because even if we can't do anything with the data, we could always give it to the school board or something. Like, I know it's not necessarily the total purview of the town to purchase land.
I think we're gonna get there. Good. When we get, I want to bring that topic up.
So I'm just going through the ones that we have outstanding. I guess we can decide if we're gonna address them tonight or if we're gonna come back in 3 weeks to address them.
Well, let's keep what we have now.
On the very last question, the Cumberland Rides, do you think we should say senior ride service? Because I don't know if people necessarily would, I mean, I know Cumberland Rides. and
It's
I know
known
that
as
we do.
Cumberland Area Rides.
No, I know what it's called, but do you think most people, all people in town know what that means?
Those who use it certainly can, and those who need it.
I was thinking about that because
It doesn't make it, you know, if you don't need it, you.
I was almost thinking, and not that everyone's gonna do all the research, but someone might read that and go, what is that? And then Google it. And
Right.
that's sort of why I wanted to keep it as,
But you're saying, are my transportation needs are being met, driving, biking, senior ride service,
yeah.
or senior ride services, or whatever, but, because there was somebody on Facebook today or yesterday who was asking about an elderly person who needed rides and blah, 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 and several people said, do you know what Cumberland Rides?
I don't think if you change it, it would be enough to make a difference. Like, someone might answer it correctly, but then that might come out of the comments or something. That's my thought. Does the difference make a difference? It's something I've heard and I've been trying to live by ever since.
Is the ride program restricted to, is it age restricted?
Yes.
It is.
I was
age
a volunteer for a little while.
restricted.
all
It's
the
not
folks I get-
disability, it's not like anyone with a disability can request it.
Because there's still the regional transportation
I shouldn't
program that
say.
covers.
But there's a board of directors. I think it's out of the rec department.
I don't think it's a comprehensive plan detail that we need to know.
It's just mentioned in a list.
Yeah, this is just an example.
Yeah, yeah. Mhm.
There are more too, like there's RTP, but we need to put all that in. Guess you could jump down onto the breeze bus from the Tuttle Road over to us.
Yes, Bill.
What are the questions that, Bob, you want to table? Do you have additional questions that you wanted to add?
I have a topic discussion that I'd like us to engage in for a couple of minutes and see where it goes. So as we talk about zoning and we talk about land use, we talk about density, we talk about affordable housing. One thing we haven't talked about is education. And whether this committee decides to ask a couple of questions regarding education, I think is important. I don't want my opinion to steer the committee or the discussion. One of the things that I point out is that Cumberland is a large receiver of state aid for education compared to Falmouth and Yarmouth. And it may be based on the fact that it's a little ambiguous for the data points that where they're taking it from, because our valuations as the communities are pretty close, but we receive a lot more state aid for education. Primarily, in my opinion, because we have less commercial valuation. So the more valuation that we try to get, it will be offset by lesser state aid. And I think that's a conversation that at some level, maybe not this group, but some things had more understanding of state aid can explain that to us. So when you talk about land acquisition for future school construction, if we decide out of this comprehensive plan committee that we were going to rezone RR1 and RR2 and half the lot size, so that's a significant impact on our community, and it will drive another school building because the capacity that they're building with this new school up there, there's not a lot of room for capacity. It won't give us 20 years. It won't give us 30 years. Jana had a few questions that were more policy changes, and I gave them to Steve and Bridget, and I, myself, I thought to myself, okay, what question might I ask if I was to add a education segment on the comprehensive plan? One of the questions that I came up with was, would you favor an advisory opinion by the town council regarding each year's school budget? Because I've asked for parity, which is a legislative change, which if you live in a community like Falmouth or Yarmouth or most communities that are not in an SND or an RSU, the school board presents the budget, and the first people we get to look at it is the legislative body of the town council or the select board. And while they don't have the authority to change itemize in the budget, they can say the increase is too much or it's good, move it forward. So, would you support an advisory opinion? And that's a controversial question to ask. And it's something that really would require, I think, some time to think about. And I think if we look at some of Jana's questions, which I'd have to look up, but they really surround, a legislative change that probably couldn't be initiated at the town level. It'd have to come out of the state legislature or something like that. So I guess my big question to the group is, do we want to ask one or two questions about the school system? Because as we know, 70% of our tax dollars going to that entity. And, our property valuations are tied to that. Our property taxes are tied to that, and our property tax increase. When we say we have a 2% increase at the town level, doesn't doesn't mean much. It's not, you know, it's pennies on the dollar of your taxes, but when you say a 2% increase on 50 million, that's a much different. We're not doing this. Result.
So question though, on the, I understand where you're going, why you want to do it. But does it matter from a town perspective, whether people want to get an advisory opinion or not? And the reason I say, especially if it has to be a legislative thing that's going to impact the entire state and every school administrative district state, doesn't matter, think or damn what Cumberland says, if you're going to go and do that.
I think the awareness to the land use is really what I'm driving.
Yeah, that's a different question than the advisory opinion though.
But it was, you know, just an exercise that I did today. So what would be a question that I asked? But really, I think the question that we're going to drill down with is land use, you know, so is land use going to be tied to affordable housing, to income levels, or are we going to change zoning just to make more lots? And there is a cause and effect.
100%.
Yeah, sorry. I was just gonna say, like, comparing the old surveys to this survey, I don't see much value in adding those questions to, or those types of questions to this survey. I do think it's an interesting question, but I'm not sure that this survey we're trying to get out the door right now is the best hope for that. That's my opinion.
I think if the gist of what you're trying to get to is that to your point on the land use, if you change the land use piece, it is going to encourage more development, which is going to increase the population of the school district.
Yeah.
That's right. That's the crux of the issue that you're asking about. So if we want to allow more growth in town, that means that we'll need more students, which means more school. Right. So.
But you can't restrict growth of a town based solely on the fact that we might have more.
No,
And you can't do anything about it.
I agree. I just trying to get people to acknowledge that by doing things like changing, like, for example, if folks want to change zoning sizes and RR1 from 4 to 2, or allow different zoning, that is going to change the growth pattern. I think it's just trying to get people to acknowledge that, understanding that making these changes will change that. Is that where you're going? Or,
Yes.
I mean, I think they know that.
I'm happy to make zoning changes, you know, for workforce housing. I'm not happy to make zoning changes for $2 million homes.
agreed.
So I don't know how we get there, but I think we should know that going into this.
I mean, I think it's a tangled web. You know, everything sort of impacts other things. And so I think it's up for people to subjectively, hopefully, think through some decisions that they're making. And, you know, I think it's kind of impossible, though, to really fully, you know, because, for example, let's say we wanted a grocery store in town. Well, in order to have a grocery store, you really need to have people to staff the grocery store. And we do not have the workforce. We just do not. And no one wants to drive an hour each way to go to work in Cumberland, you know, and live out in the boonies where they can actually afford to live. So, you know, like if we build more housing for people like that, well, then they might have kids, heaven forbid, and then they go, you know, so it's like, you know, you just kind of run around in circles and there's no real answer to it. There's some people that are going to be harmed and some people that are going to be benefited, you know, and helped. And you just hope that you're making the most people benefit as possible, and that even the people who are harmed and with one particular policy decision will be helped by others, you know. And so it's just, there's no like perfect answer that solves everything for everything. And
we can't stagnate. I mean, there's going to be growth. That's just the nature of,
If we do nothing, we'll still have growth.
yes, exactly,
If we
exactly.
do nothing, we'll still have growth.
Yes, yes.
The questions I wanted to ask were not land use, which Bob will tell you. Like, like, we can dance around it all we want. Peter is not here every time. It's like, oh, we've done such a great job on the planning. I mean, on the CP plans, and we've done 90%. It's like, we've done 90% of buying oceanfront property and Twin Brooks and blah, blah, blah. Since 1970, whatever the first the first one was, they've done exactly the same thing, which is, oh my God, it's too expensive to live here. And we've never, ever addressed that. And school was a big part of that. And people know it's a big part of it. And people are pushing back, and 120 people showed up at the school board meeting, which was, not enough, but it's unheard of. But like, there have to be questions. There's room for 500 more kids in the new school, right? I think, if that. And the school itself is estimating they're gonna have a growth of 250 in the next 10 years. Before it's even freaking built, or, just barely built, it's gonna be almost max. So at some point, there has to be questions about, I know I'm now Deputy Secretary of State for Communications, and I've been there all two months, and all I've learned in 2 months is literally any legislator can put forward a bill. Our senator is the head of the education committee. Like, we've got an in for at least investigating and talking and working with MDOE of finding a way to get, because this isn't what MDOE intended when they wanted everybody to consolidate. It's not what people in 1964, I think, wanted when it was cost sharing, it's cost effectiveness, it's to keep things more affordable. And if that's not what's happening, there needs to be a change to make that happen. Whether that's financial oversight somehow by the town, where you look at Falmouth's budget went up, the school budget increased by 3.3%, and the town's was less than that, and their taxes are going up 3%. Deliberate attempt to keep their mill rate down. They can't do that. They went back through their budget line by line and cut, $180,000? Nothing. You're not going to see anything in your tax bill. And the school gave 8%, which they could give 8% raises. We could never say no to that. But they could absolutely say, ooh, if you want 54 million, you got to cut 10% from that, figure it out. Let us know what that looks like as part of an overarching thing. So there's got to be a way, and there's got to be investigation. Dissolving the district has to be looked at. Other ways, joining with other towns, whatever. There's got to be questions of what people's appetite would be for what do you think, what do you want, how concerned are you about this? And we're just dancing around it and asking people like, do you like Twin Brooks and do you support spending more money on things like Twin Brooks? And they're going to say yes. I'm going to say yes. Love Twin Brooks. It's awesome. But it's not going to, no matter what they do, they can never counter what the school's doing. And they can't counter what North Yarmouth is doing. If you drive through North Yarmouth, their single family home and high density housing is way, we've always been number 2 in the state, and they've been like 5 or 6. They've got to be crawling right up our butt right now with how aggressively they're building. Those extra 250 kids, if the school says, oh, we'll never need another school, it's not that far away. And what do we do?
But I think we're getting out of the purview of a comp plan right now. I think that's right. So you guys have been here for 2.5 hours. I don't know what's, like, if you told me if we go back to the DACF checklist, where in that checklist are we gonna include this, right? I think that's probably more pressing. I agree. It's probably more pressing than anything that we've done today.
I think it's under.
Yeah, but the reality of the exercise we're doing right now is, unfortunately, do you like Twin Brooks, and where would you like to see growth in the town, right? So
So the purpose of the comprehensive plan isn't to keep the state happy. The purpose of the comprehensive plan is to make sure that this community has a vision for the next.
But I don't think an opinion on dissolving the district, it has a place in the comprehensive. Okay.
And that's incredibly this is an incredibly complicated topic, and putting it in, like, for the purposes of our survey and putting this out to the town, I think,
That wasn't the I don't know the questions. What I was
well,
saying.
I haven't seen
That
the
wasn't the
question.
question, but it's like, those are,
I'll be
Topics that
comfortable
we-
to say that we had a conversation.
Hmm.
And the committee, decided that this is the comprehensive plan, but I think that it was important to me and for some of us to at least raise the issues that, 70% of our tax dollar is going to another entity. And it's driving a lot of the changes in the community and a lot of the services are directed in that effort. We talk about ball fields, little league fields, down at Twin Brooks. We're not building them so much for ourselves, is that we're building them for the SAD. So we're joined at the hip with an entity that we have little control over.
no control.
And if there's a way to articulate that in the survey so that people's responses,
I mean, I would just say that the kids in the school district are residents too. So, I know my kids really appreciate, the benefits that they have being in the community and in the school system. And I think the thing that gets lost is that they don't have a vote. They're not voting age. They're not able to participate in a lot of this stuff. And so it's on us to think of their, and I don't know, I just don't, I get the frustration that we have it's like taxation without representation, in a sense, but we spend a lot of money on education because education is extremely valuable.
It's extremely valuable in every town.
Yeah.
And we spend exponentially more.
I think that the crux for me is when we start to talk about changing the zoning and I want to direct it towards affordability and workforce people and how do we try to ensure that?
Mhm.
And we don't want to, I don't want to change my zoning for, more mega mansions.
Right.
Well, and I don't know how much people are gonna connect those dots. I mean, we're all connecting those dots, that if we're gonna change the zoning, it's gonna impact enrollment, but we just had our TRICOM meeting with the school board, North Yarmouth and us, and one of the biggest things we need to figure out and codify is to make sure that their enrollment projection person understands what's happening in terms of projects that are being approved and what, because there's a disconnect there. And a lot of that work is incumbent on us as counselors to do a much better job of collaborating on, can we share this mower or do we all both need to be buying new friggin' front loaders? Like, no, we don't, right? Like, and so I don't know how that makes into the survey, but I think that in terms of the acknowledgement of if we make changes to the zoning, that could impact the enrollment. And we all as a community need to be prepared for that and also be proactive about that and get rid of this bullshit like, well, they get to decide it's 70%, we don't have any control. It's like, okay, well, we can be a part of the problem or we can be a part of the solution and we can start talking about this stuff. Sorry.
No, it's good, it's good.
Sorry, and so I don't know if that's in the survey or if it's in these meetings or where it is, but I think it is important that like people are connecting the dots.
I don't think it's in the survey.
Yeah.
I don't think it's in the survey, it may not be in the plan, but it may be one evening of our public engagement where we educate the public on all the cogs in the wheel,
But they know.
how things are.
Like if you
Well,
ask them, what is it we developed when she took up the affordable, they say no.
Still speaking.
So I'm assuming that they don't know because you're talking about it. If everybody knew, we wouldn't have this conversation right now. So I don't think you can assume, like, I don't have a dog in the fight. I don't have kids in the school system. I'm retired. I moved here retired and I love it here. But I value education. So I understand the dilemma that the town has to have this amazing school system, but we pay for it. But I don't think you can assume that every single person in Cumberland understands the conversation that we just had. I don't think they do.
That housing is connected to needing in the school. I mean, that's essentially what he's
I
saying.
think, I think that,
I think it's more complex than we're building too many houses and so we've got too many kids in the school. I don't think it's that simple. I think it's much more complex than that because of our zoning and the potential for the comprehensive plan and the survey to influence where this town goes in the next 10 years.
We live in a very desirable community.
We do. We do.
I'm just thinking out loud a little bit about how this might actually relate to this survey is basically because Bob's comment about not wanting more $2 million mansions, and my thought immediately went to those kids are not going to Greeley. Like that's, and in my community and on the Forest side, we're in the minority of people who send our kids to Greeley. Like most kids are private school kids. So I guess that's one of the complexities of adding, so if you are adding more unrestricted development, multi-million-dollar houses or what have you, by definition, those folks tend to, send their kids elsewhere to schools anyway. So, and there's a question now, when your kids go into 9th grade, they ask you, like, are you planning to send your kid to Greeley High School or are you sending them somewhere else? And, my daughter is a 9th grader and a good 10, 15, 20% of her class does not go to Greeley High School. So, and that's demonstrated as you go to high school, and the enrollment there is not as massive as it is in the, lower schools, basically, because as kids get older, parents start sending them elsewhere. But anyway, I think it's just more complicated than you add more development and you get more kids in the school system, because more and more with this wealthy community, you're having people who aren't adding to the school system, but they are adding to the tax base. So,
I think we moved to accept this as amended with the understanding that GP Cog is going to do the copy editing. Because these are good questions, but we're going to need to ask a lot of questions, and we're not going to be able to come up with them at 8:42 in the evening.
So then it becomes a matter of what's so is the goal now to get the survey out?
I think the goal should be get the survey out.
Right, or is it, do we need to think about, we need to add something else about the school? And right, in the growth, the cause and effect of changing the flavor and zoning of town is gonna impact the schools, right? Is that something we feel we need to add to the survey? We don't feel we need to add it to the survey, then the survey.
I just think it's too late. We've been doing this for months. It's going to be 1.5 years before you know it. And we need to get the survey out or we're going to be way behind.
Should we do a test group before it actually finalized?
We did.
Let's find 50 people or.
We ran it by at least one other person from everyone on the subcommittee. I don't remember if that's enough.
Yeah.
Would you restate
the diversity of that?
Yeah, I guess I'm making a motion. I move to accept this survey as amended with the understanding that the copy editing it will be done by GP Cog. It does not need to come back to the group for additional approval.
And it will come back for review. Their edit. We will see it.
Do we want to do that?
Like
I'm talking about is West Cumberland Athletic Complex capital, or like that's what I'm talking about, copy editing. Drown Road Ball Fields, is Ball Fields capital B? I don't want to see that. I want them to correct it, but I don't want to come back to.
I want to see it formatted.
Yeah, we won't change any of the verbiage, to be clear. We're just grammar or formatting.
Yeah.
I'm on board with your central point, Devin. I would suggest that we endorse draft that we worked on tonight,
Mhm.
and that it comes back to us as an entire committee on a certain date for final approval. I'm just a little uncomfortable in giving final approval to a draft which has seen a number of different changes. Like, it's just some of it is permeating.
Mhm.
really see the whole. And looking at my calendar, I have to say to you folks, if we're gonna hope to get this done in June, that we would, we'd have to have a meeting next week.
Get GP have it ready for us by then.
About the next meeting?
If it were
So
next
the next
week,
meeting is next week.
Yeah, I mean, we're just doing, I mean, we're not changing the substance of anything. You guys wrote it, so we'll just, yeah, we're just proofreading and formatting it. Yeah. So, yeah.
The 29th, Steve. is that what
right,
you're
so
looking for?
next week begins with Memorial Day, which is clearly out west. So we could be, I could be Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
I was gonna say, does it have to be the
Yeah, I was gonna say,
entire
one suggestion
group or
is you guys-
just be the committee?
See, the committee, I think it's the entire committee's survey. So, as I see it, Lorraine,
There is a motion on the table.
well, it wasn't seconded, so,
Wasn't second, so it dies.
well, it's not, I
And
haven't called it dead yet. I'm asking Evan to consider amendment, basically.
Got it. Okay. Sorry, I.
sorry, I'm amenable to
I
that.
just want to make sure, do the meetings need to be noticed in a certain amount in advance? I do not know with the comprehensive plan committee, so I just wanted to make sure.
We
Uh,
sort of
No.
done them on the fly.
Okay,
No,
I just wanted,
Well,
Yeah, I don't think committee meetings need to be.
cool,
Yeah.
perfect. I just wanted to make sure.
They do require notice, but there's no time.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure that that was,
Okay. Well, what would people's ability and tolerance be for the meeting next week?
It would be a short meeting.
Subcommittee meeting?
Are we convening only to review this survey?
Yeah, okay.
And if so,
Questions are we convening to review just the survey as opposed to breaking into the three,
groups,
On the
yeah,
29th, is the same for the
which we
29th.
thought we might do tonight, but
we didn't do.
never, never got that far. I think my answer would be, given short notice, yes, we can just get together for the purpose of signing off on the committee's survey to be put out to the public.
Can it be a virtual meeting as well, so some of us can join?
Well, I was gonna throw out that if you are unable to attend, it's incumbent on you to have reviewed the survey and sent in an email that whether or not you concur with.
Can we vote via
By
email?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, could this be an email?
Bridget's raising her hand.
Yeah, we have, I was gonna say, we have that forum, so,
Like physically in the room?
no, we can have virtual forum, I think.
Virtual voting.
So my only concern, just from past experience with the COVID, is that each committee has to vote whether or not to allow virtual meetings or combo virtual in-person meetings. Yeah, so just mention
We
that.
didn't do that at the
Just
beginning?
put our bylaws. I don't know if we're gonna address that.
That was something. that
Should we
town
finish the
attorney
vote on
was
whether
pretty
we're accepting this as a draft and then decide when the next meeting is?
Make the
Can
motion.
you repeat your motion
I
again?
forgot what it was. All right, motion to accept the as amended as draft with GP cog making copy edits and returning for full approval.
Seconded.
That encompasses what I was suggesting. There's nothing in the bylaws that I see about virtual participation or voting.
So she seconded the motion.
Yeah, so we have a motion on the table and we can second.
Who seconded?
I did, yeah,
Thank you.
Thanks, Kate.
so we can vote on that.
All right, so we'll vote first whether to reconvene after we get the minutes and touch-ups have been done. And then we'll figure out a plan. And any further discussion on Evan's motion? All right, those in favor? We do need a.
As your hand,
I don't know what the motion was. I forgot.
To accept it as it was amended on the screen. As a draft
And to reconvene.
and to reconvene.
That would be two separate questions.
And Tig and Bob, you're not voting.
I don't vote. Bob doesn't ever vote.
Okay, so I have one nay. Okay.
So you press the actual vote. All right, then the next issue, the motion having passed, is to determine when we meet to when we meet to reconvene and look at the finished product. And, next week is the last week of May, and if we stick to our June schedule, it's our prime opportunity to make sure that we stay on schedule.
These guys probably need a little time to.
Well,
get
we
together.
sort of, I think, Paul said.
Yeah, it's not a hard list. We're just, we can have it by Friday, Thursday, next week, Wednesday.
Well, I
This is
think you're
therein lies
meeting
the-
Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday night next week.
I mean, we can get it done by Wednesday night.
Then
All right.
you, Thursday.
I mean, we're not making anything substantive. You guys have made all the changes. We're just capitalizing, calming and,
Okay.
Formatting.
formatting.
So Thursday would be the 29th. What's everybody's availability?
I'll be here.
Thursday, 29th.
I'll be here. I'll be here.
I might not be.
I think it's all
Oh, wait.
Okay.
So do we set up our own subcommittee meeting date? Do we set up our own subcommittee date or?
So,
That'll be-
so let's then,
29 probably works. I probably can bring my kid and put him in the corner. Take, brings her kid and put him in the corner.
Yeah, we can set up a coloring
Yeah,
station.
who else?
for kids.
I'll manage color.
If it's short, I can count.
just to stay on the even keel, let's do a motion that the committee meets on Thursday, May 29 at 6 PM here at the town hall to to review and act upon the report as will be not clarified, but as will be edited in the meantime.
On the survey.
Yes, the survey. The draft survey that we arrived at tonight. Does that make sense? You have-
Do you want to say as formatted by GP?
That's the word.
Well,
Yes. Yes, that's.
Oh, yeah. I didn't look at that.
What about the rest of the items on our agenda for tonight?
Um,
Should we, I mean, I'm not just going to do them right now, obviously, but, what's the plan? Are we supposed to be doing subcommittee groups together? No, we're just going to go, okay. So we're just pushing off to the next meeting?
The 12th, right? 12th of June.
Okay, so no subcommittee meetings or breakouts, in individual groups. We're going to wait until our next meeting.
I think that's the plan.
And on your way out, I'll give you the sheet you were gonna work on, so you can just kind of look at it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's
Cool.
just a chart, you know.
Maybe
but yeah.
so moved Steve's idea.
29th?
I don't know, do you
We need to vote on it?
or
Oh, we don't need to
just
vote on
do
it.
it?
Do it.
I was just saying, you don't necessarily need
So
to
we
vote
move
on it.
to- I agree, we don't,
Everyone agrees.
we don't necessarily need to, but since we did the first stage by vote and motion,
Okay,
I just thought it would be either. and-
So moved.
all right, Evan has moved.
Thank you.
Someone say next.
Seconded.
I second.
Bill seconds.
Okay, those in favor?
Aye.
All in favor? Jana, are you good?
Thank you.
Okay.
I moved to table everything else.
So we're now just going to look at it, and then we'll be ready to do
It's 9 o'clock, folks. I think it's time for a motion to adjourn.
Man, I thought that was.
We have, yeah, no, we already did that.
Yeah, it's like kind of red online, but yeah.
I just wanted to acknowledge Callie Laughlin, who is also from GBCog. She'll be helping us out with the comprehensive plan. We didn't get to introduce her to everybody, which is.
Welcome, Kelly.
Sorry. Give her a warm.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Favor?
Aye.
All right, so we're adjourned.
Oh, yeah, wait, do you want to?
8:55.
Once we help.
All right, thanks, folks. Thanks for your patience.
Good boy.
All your help.